We're doing actually pretty good on time here. Shh. Okay. The staff would please come to the table.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening. Can you have an update for us?
Yes, ma'am.
Ready for it.
Jacqueline, could you switch the screen back? Okay. Belmont Innovation, quick reorientation of the site, 111 acres south of Route 7, west of Belmont Ridge. Total site area, as I said, 111 acres. Currently, it crosses 3 zoning districts, A3, PDIP, and PDGI. By right, commercial industrial development specific to the planned development districts is about 1,329,000 square feet of development potential by right today. Proposal, several components, zoning map amendment would convert the entire site to PDIP. Since you've seen it in January, it was about 4.8 million when you saw it before. It's been reduced down to 2.9 million square feet for the entirety of the site. They've retained their special exception to go up to 1.0 FAR. That would be on individual lots that may be created subsequent to the application. This has to do with a park proffer that they're offering. When they dedicate the entirety of the park parcel, it's going to create smaller parcels for the rest of the data center campus and will necessitate the need for the special exception. Minor special exceptions regarding development standards between data center and utility substation uses. Also some reduced setbacks along Russell Branch Parkway and Gloucester Parkways. In January, the applicant presented a proposal to you that only included the Russell Branch extension as part of the CTP road network. They reintroduced an alternate sheet which accommodates both the Gloucester Parkway extension as part of the CTP countywide transportation plan and the Russell Branch Parkway extension as well. 2 utility substations that will serve the use. This is north is to your right for the orientation, so there would be a north and south data center or substation campus to support the overall data center use. And this is a summary of the updates. Again, reincorporating the Gloucester Parkway extension, reduce of the overall gross floor area. They've increased use of glass in the architectural panels as part of the design of the data center uses, and also commitment to solar panels for each of the data center buildings. The Planning Commission last year did recommend approval of the application at the time when both the Gloucester Parkway extension and Russell Branch extensions were incorporated as part of the plan. With the applicant reintroducing this aspect to the project, with the amendments, we generally find it is consistent with the 2 applicable place types and are recommending board approval of the applications. That is the conclusion of my updates. We have folks from the Department of Transportation and Capital Infrastructure here to answer questions. We also have the communications director from Dominion Energy if there's questions related to this application as well. Thank you.
Mr. Rogers, I appreciate that there's somebody from Dominion Energy, but I would appreciate while we're having this conversation, that the board does not bring in issues of energy that would not be allowed to be discussed. Okay.
That's correct. The provision of electricity is something that's required by code. You may be able to have the ancillary effects of providing electricity that the board could consider.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, you have any questions? No questions? Ms. Glass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, staff. If this application is denied, are there any grandfathered site plans or previous rezonings submitted for these parcels that would grandfather the land into the revised 93 zoning ordinance, or would the land be governed under the current zoning ordinance?
There is a grandfathered site plan application to clear the site and for utility substation use. There was also a site plan submitted for the first data center building for the site, but that was submitted under the new ordinance or the current zoning ordinance.
Do you know how, what the maximum size that by right data center could be built?
Under the existing zoning?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Up to 1.3 million square feet of data center campus use under the current zoning districts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sains?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So originally, the applicant filed to go to a 1.0 FAR, but recently there has been a change to go to 0.06. Is that accurate?
Correct. An overall reduction of the entire site, which would equate to 0.6 FAR.
Okay, so they originally were at like 4 million and some change.
Correct.
Now they're down to 2 and some change. Is that
2.9 million, yes, sir.
okay? And then by right, it's how much again?
About 1.3.
Okay. And then with and you said they've added in some solar panels. Do we know how many homes could those solar panels technically power?
I would have to defer to the applicant for those data sets. I know they're asking for about 70,000 square feet, which would be 10,000 square feet per data center building, but I would not know the conversion to how much housing that would support.
I'm sorry, the applicant made a presentation, stop his time, made a presentation already, and so we're not asking questions of the applicant
sorry.
today. Thank you.
All right, so I can't answer that. They can't answer that.
No, we're not asking questions of the applicant. They've already done the presentation.
Okay.
So we're not asking questions.
And then as far as you know, the HOAs that are in close proximity, are they in support of this application?
The HOA has indicated support for the application, yes.
Okay. And,
That's the representative of the overall body.
correct, okay. All right, so the HOA in close proximity to this is in support of the application. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Letourneau?
Yeah, so the application was revised quite significantly since the last time we were here, and is smaller, significantly smaller than it was. The only piece that's really left as part of the rezoning then is the A3 parcel, right? They're not requesting a modification to the FAR anymore on the existing by right parcel, correct?
So the A3 parcel is being incorporated into the overall campus.
Right. And staff, the general plan generally does not support split zoning, correct?
Correct.
So it's, we've heard this tonight on several applications. It's actually pretty hard to get staff's approval on an application or support for an application because there's usually some outstanding issue or other that oftentimes the board sort of, makes a decision on. But in this case, there are no outstanding issues.
Correct. With reintroducing the Gloucester Parkway, that resolved our last remaining issue.
Right. And staff, in fact, because staff typically does not support split zoning, staff would support incorporating the A3 parcel into the overall project.
Yes, sir. An overall development plan is preferable.
Okay. I don't suppose staff has any kind of estimation as to what the value of the proffer commitments are?
The total package, no, sir.
Yeah, not from a monetary standpoint.
Correct.
But certainly from a location standpoint, it relates to where the buildings are on the campus as well as how they're designed.
Correct.
The most recent revisions to the zoning ordinance, which impose some restrictions on site design and things like that, do not apply to this application because this application was grandfathered into the previous zoning ordinance, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so none of those protections that the board worked on last year would apply to a by right application here, or would they?
It would not, although they've made a number of concessions to try to improve the site.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Umstead?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question for either staff or the applicant.
The applicant is not answering questions this evening.
All right.
They've already did a presentation, and when we come back a second time, they don't do it. They don't answer questions a second time.
All right.
So.
Let me ask staff then. So we've gone from a required 300-foot buffer along Goose Creek to the applicant's proffered 500-foot buffer. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Are there other measures that the applicant has proffered that would protect water quality along Goose Creek?
Yes, ma'am. They've offered the open space buffers, the additional buffer and screening. They've also offered to reforestation, plantings of meadow-style plantings underneath the power line easement, up to 4 low-impact development techniques across the property. green infrastructure elements of the overall building design, green roofs and those sorts of things to reduce treatment of stormwater runoff from the buildings themselves. So there are a number of concessions the applicant has made to try to address proximity to Goose Creek.
It's a mistake.
And as far as, so you've got a 19-acre Goose Creek Park being proffered
Yes,
as
ma'am.
well? And a canoe launch, I believe, trailhead parking lot?
With parking, yes, ma'am.
All right. On, what are they doing vis-à-vis noise?
There are a number of design proffers related to power generation. They're doing wraps around the generators and air chillers. They're also having to meet the ordinance requirements for noise attenuation, also building into the hillside to reduce sort of the profile of the building to try to reduce, and then also putting generators to the interior of the site.
All right. And on aesthetics, what measures, if any, have they taken to exceed our current requirements for aesthetic treatment on
They've
their
committed
buildings?
up to 5 different, for those principal building facades along Belmont Ridge. They've proffered to building articulation, variation of materials, a number of step back of parts of the building to reduce the overall massing of the project. And as I said before, they're building into the slope of the property. And then for the other buildings that are, or buildings that would face sort of the flanks of the property, a number of concessions about reducing the scale and massing through fenestration and other building elements and architectural elements.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Kirschner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, staff, for all your hard work. So I just want to make sure, you guys you support the application now, is that correct? At this
Yes,
point,
sir, we've
everything's
concluded
been
it's
satisfied.
consistent with the policies, yes, sir.
Fair enough. So a couple things. First of all, I know there's a lot of concern in my district. I'm concerned about the new next era lines that are coming through. As far as you're aware, this is not being serviced by those. It's not within the restrained area at all. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So it has no impact as far as that's concerned. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the two things that I think are really, a couple things that I think are really interesting. I want to make sure, how much solar are they proffering for the top of the building here?
Total across the 7 buildings, 70,000 square feet.
70,000?
Correct.
Okay. Have we ever had any data center with 70,000 square feet, to your knowledge?
Through a
that has-
proffer? No, sir.
Okay. All right. Are we keeping track of the record, of what the surrounding neighbors in these neighborhoods, their HOAs are saying? Are they supporting it? Are they against it? What is their
There
feedback?
have been a number of comments that have expressed concerns through the public comment. We have received some online comments since January that generally are concerned about the proliferation of data center in the area and the power.
I understand, but I'm talking about the surrounding neighborhoods. Do you have, my understanding is the HOAs in the neighborhoods are actually supporting it, but do you have that data?
Yes,
I understand a lot of people in the county may not be, but.
Yes, sir. We have a handful of people that are on their own from local property owners around that have expressed their concerns.
All right. Have you had some that would have expressed their favor for it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would you say that is more than those with any concern? Or do you not keep track of the numbers? And if you don't,
I've not kept track of the
Fair enough.
split, although we've had a number of agencies outside, like the Goose Creek, a lot of the Goose Creek preservation groups that have come out in support of the project.
Okay. I think those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
may I correct an earlier response to Mr. Letourneau?
sure.
Okay. So I want to clarify that the by right, if they were to develop by right today, they would be subject to the current zoning ordinance. Because this application was submitted, okay, you got it? Okay, understood. Thank you.
No, finish that thought, please.
So the grandfathering resolution, this application was submitted prior to the zoning ordinance adoption in December. So they filed under the revised 93 and will continue to be able to develop per the elements of the revised 93.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Brixman,
If the application was approved, I'm sorry to clarify.
thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you said that by right, if this were to fail, by right, they would be able to build 1.3 million square feet of data center.
Yes, ma'am.
Would they have an ability, could they by right build substations as well?
Yes, ma'am.
How many? As many as they want, or?
As many as needed. A3 would allow it by right, and right now they're proposing 2.
But for 1.3 million square feet,
To support 1.3 million square feet, yes.
it would still be 2?
That I would
Okay,
have to
but they can't build more than what would supply the data center, right? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I think as a practical matter, they would only require what the facility requires, if that makes sense.
Okay. And do you know how many generators they would need for 1.3 million square feet?
No, ma'am, I've not done that estimate.
Okay. It's really interesting to me that the applicant is offering to do solar, because in my experience, anytime we've asked a data center applicant to do solar, we've been told it's not possible. So for me, any other applications that come to us, that will be my standard now, because now we know it's possible. So I can at least thank the applicant for that. Thank you.
Your light wasn't on before. Okay. Is it possible to do enough solar to run a data center?
I would assume at some point, yes, but I would not know what would require to do that.
I would imagine that it is not.
Okay.
I would imagine that the solar will not be, that it is not possible to do enough solar. So I appreciate that there's solar there, but the solar would be offset for something else. It will not be for the data center.
I don't believe the intent of the proffer was to solely operate the data center off of
Or even operate it really at all, because that there's just not enough. You just literally can't do that. Mr. Kirshner asked a question about transmission lines, and I think, and if I get your language wrong, please correct me, I think he said something to the effect of, so this project would not affect power. And is it possible that this project, that because power is on a grid, and it's not just simply that single facility, that there is immediate impacts on the surrounding area because of with power and other properties with the power? Is that a possible thing?
Madam Chair, I don't want to give you the wrong answer on that. We do have the gentleman from Dominion Energy here this evening. Could he perhaps answer that?
Yeah, I would be happy to have Dominion Energy come to the table.
Mr. Richardson, could you come up? Mr.
Stop my
Richardson is
time, please, while he comes up.
he is the Director of Communications for Dominion Energy.
If he's going to come up, I have to ask him some questions, though.
We prepped him for that.
Mr. Richardson, hi, how are you? Thank you for being here.
Hi.
Mr. Richardson, you all are required to power this data center and everything, right?
That's right.
So no matter what it takes, you have to power them, right?
That's correct.
No matter how many transmission lines could have to go up, where the lines may be in places or that we don't want them to be, but Dominion doesn't have an option but to power what we put there, correct?
It's our legal obligation.
It's your legal obligation to power them.
To provide
And,
electricity, yes.
and is the power on a grid? Or do you just say, we're going to power this facility and then we're going to power this facility? How's that work?
When a data center, for instance, requires power, they reach out to our local distribution planners. And our distribution planners are the distribution grid is what serves your houses, right? It's a lower voltage. So, and that's how we serve data centers. The high voltage transmission lines, that's the group that I work with. The high voltage transmission lines come into a substation, and then out of the substation, we bring the distribution lines, and they serve the data centers.
The distribution lines should serve the grid.
Well, the transmission lines are sort of like Interstate 95, and the distribution lines are sort of like Belmont Ridge Rd.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Saines has made me aware that that when the last application was here, that I allowed a question for the Tillage application for the applicant. I was not aware that I did that, and I shouldn't have done that because the applicant has already done a presentation, so we don't do that. If I did that one time, one, I apologize because I should not have, and two, I will allow a question to this applicant as well as I did if I allowed a question to the last applicant. So I think, who was it down who had the question first? Who had that question first? To the applicant, and I said no to the application. Mr. Saines, you had a question for the applicant?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for allowing this to happen. I know it's rarity. My question earlier was about the solar panels. How many homes could the solar panels power, and will the solar panels provide any power to the on-site facilities?
So the answer to the last question is yes, the solar will provide power to the on-site facilities. Our estimation for how many homes would be about the equivalent of Alexander's Grove HOA, which is the neighboring HOA, which we've worked hard with, by the way. But it's between 150 and 250 homes would be what the solar panels. It's about a megawatt of power. So you hear megawatts a lot in data center conversations. It's a little bit more than a full megawatt of power between the square footage on the rooftops of the admin buildings, by the way. That's the difference between other data centers.
All right, thank you.
And thank you, Madam Chair, for that.
Thank you. And I apologize because I didn't realize I had done one for Tillage. I shouldn't have done that. Okay, we have a lot of people on who want to speak on this. Right now I have 34 I have down, and then 4 more who are here remotely. So I'm going to call your name in advance so you know that you're going to be next up. So we will start with John Benedict, followed by Mary Turpak, followed by Patricia Stumpfer. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, and thank you. Appreciate what you do here. I am John Benedict, and last month the board recognized that data center zoning should be reviewed after 20 years of dramatic growth and largely unmanaged growth inherited from prior boards, frankly. We appreciate and look forward to that review, but Loudoun's got more than enough issues with projects that are currently by right without supersizing an application like this one. They include, of course, the insufficient power, transmission lines, the cost to consumers, the aesthetic issues, the quality of life issues, environmental problems. Yet this applicant still wants you to waive the rules. They started out proposing Loudoun's biggest data center ever, the size of 40 or 45 Home Depots. It would have expanded operating data center square footage and energy demand by 15 or 20% in this one building alone, and would have consumed as much power as many, many thousands of houses. Now, we hear they've submitted 11th-hour proffers to reduce the proposed square footage to 2.9 million square feet, and by any measure, it still remains huge. It still demands too much power in an area with too many large data centers already. It'd be triple the size of many of the largest recent data centers and 20 times the size of some of the earliest ones that were built only 15 years ago. Now it's, 29 Home Depots and perhaps, 5 or 10% of the power? They still want rezoning from A3 to PDIP. They still want a special exception to enable this increase in size, more than doubling from 1.3 to 2.9. We can't keep making data centers bigger. This site is just not appropriate for a data center of this size, and indeed, we need to take a serious look at how big is too big for Loudoun. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mary Turpak, followed by Patricia Stumpfer, and followed by Robert Pollard and Natalie Pien. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair Randall and members of the board. I am Mary Turpak, and I live south of Lovettsville. I'm speaking tonight in opposition to the Belmont Innovation Campus rezoning application. This is a huge data center project, and the additional acreage requested here is too much to be approved before you have amended the zoning ordinance to establish site standards and controls. You've already set that process in motion by directing staff to prepare amendments to the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance to specifically address the challenges presented by data centers. That's good, because we know the cumulative impacts of data centers in terms of neighborhood intrusion, noise, water usage, rising land values as the data center industry gobbles up acreage at astronomical prices and requires an astronomical demand for energy. The threat of huge, ugly transmission lines and substations ruining our rural areas and neighborhoods is real and a direct result of data center demand. This is not okay. Belmont Innovation can wait a few months while you amend the zoning ordinance, and in the meantime, the tax revenue will keep rolling in from existing data centers. I'm sure you've been hearing from the applicants regularly, and today as well. Tonight, you're hearing from your constituents. I ask you to be the board that sets the bar high enough that your constituents will be happy to have data centers here, keeping our tax rates down, instead of having to endure the consequences of uncontrolled data center growth. Please deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, and by the way, data centers don't vote.
Good evening, and you will be followed by Robert Pollard, followed by Natalie Pien and Roger Smith. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Randall and Vice Chair Briskman and members of the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors. My name is Patricia Stumpf, and I'm a resident of Leesburg, happily. I am here tonight, I'll be very brief, but I'm here tonight to express my strong opposition to expanding the footprint of the Belmont Innovation Campus and to amend the zoning to meet their needs. The size and the scale of the expanded campus is not fitting with our community and our vision for the community. It will have too many negative impacts on both all of the quality of life issues that you're going to hear about tonight, and many, many more. I think because we've already learned so much about data centers in Virginia, we know better. We know better than to go forward with something that's not prudent at this moment in time. You already recognize the need for regulations and new requirements, and I applaud you for that. Let's do this right. You don't want to do this wrong because the long-term impact is just too great. We've already talked about the energy needs. The projections for the future are absolutely unprecedented. The community is not going to be able to do it. Dominion may be very good, but there's going to be a lot of years where there's going to be disruption in service and dissatisfied communities. The massive transmission lines going through a lot of Catoctin and some of the other areas are going to be an eyesore that we can't undo easily. One other final point is it's still very unclear to me, and I'm going to be learning as I go, how the short-term financial gains of data centers really benefits the communities in the long term. Building is the easy part, but living with the consequences will be so real and so painful. There are going to be few permanent jobs for this. The tax incentives will leave. And I think importantly, like all technologies, we all know this, they become obsolete. And this too will become obsolete. We will be left with these shells of that have no other function. And I think we have to be wise about this. There's some predictions saying that many of the data centers will be closing in the very short term. Thank you for listening, and I hope you will listen to the
Thank you, ma'am.
community. Yes, you're welcome.
Robert Pollard, followed by Natalie Pien and Roger Smith. Good evening.
Good evening. Chair Randall, members of the board, I'm speaking on behalf of the Data Center Work Group of the Loudoun Coalition. I'm here to ask you to deny the Belmont Innovation application. Now, most of us have all been taken terribly by surprise by the explosive growth of data centers. Yet, for some time, our group has focused on the budgetary implications of data center growth, that is to say, the overdependence on them for revenues. But most citizens, understandably, have paid little attention to data centers until recently, when they learned about the giant power lines that Dominion is building in eastern Loudoun and NextEra wants to build in the west. But the biggest shock of all has been the relentless expansion of data centers themselves. It's out of control. How is this happening? Well, for the longest time, we've heard it's progress, that there's nothing we can do about it, that long ago property owners won by right authority to build whatever they want, that the board has no way to block or alter power lines, that the Virginia legislature needs another year just to review data center policies. County staff need even longer to draft local regulations. And that after all, we hear the huge taxes that these data centers generate hold down real estate rates. And if the developers don't get their way, we hear they'll make things even worse. That's what we hear, but guess what? Tonight there is something you can do. You can vote no. Now don't blame the folks, I don't blame the folks who are pushing this because it's their job to tell you the benefits. It's their job, it's not their job, to calculate the cost. That's your job. It's your job to tally up the damage to the landscape, the environment, climate, quality of life, more and more power lines, rising costs of land, overdependence on one industry, and fiscal risk. Each time you approve another specs or rezoning, there's more encroachment on residential areas and more demand for power, and it never ends. So now is the time to say no. Say no to Belmont innovation. Just say no. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Natalie Pien, followed by Roger Smith and Ruth Ann Weaver. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Natalie Pien, a 40-year resident of Loudoun County. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts to oppose the Belmont Innovation Campus rezoning and special exception applications. While I am affiliated with many environmental organizations in many capacities, tonight I am speaking on my own behalf and in my most important role of grandmother. My grandchildren and all children deserve a livable future made possible by climate change mitigation, but we are headed in the wrong direction. The National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association, NOAA, reports that 2023 was by far the world's warmest temperature on record. In Virginia, the Virginia Clean Economy Act law to mitigate climate change is doomed for failure by one industry, data centers. The data center industry is inherently unsustainable. Data center approval business as usual must stop. Accordingly, the 2024 session of the General Assembly saw over 12 bills to regulate data centers. On February, the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors, adopted an accelerated planning and zoning review process for new data center regulations. The need to understand the data center industry's multiple negative impacts is recognized at all levels of government. On December 11, 2023, the Virginia Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, JLARC, was authorized to conduct a comprehensive assessment of data center impacts. On February 1, 2024, a bill was introduced in Congress to study the environmental impacts of artificial intelligence because AI could contribute to doubling the data center energy demand by 2026. It is irresponsible to continue approving data center applications. Therefore, the only prudent course of action is to pause data center approvals until at least the JLARC study is complete. Even better, and pause until Loudoun's data center amendments are adopted. Considering each data center application independently overlooks the cumulative impacts on the environment and energy. This approach contributed to Dominion Power's inability to provide power to all approved data centers. The solution was to allow Loudoun data centers to violate air permits and operate 24/7 on highly polluting diesel backup generators. Protect Loudoun and pause data center approvals. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pien. Roger Smith, followed by Ruth Ann Weaver. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, supervisors, Chair Randall. I wrote 350 words here. I'm not going to read them. I just want to say I agree with everything that's been said so far, and it's been said far more eloquently than I had written it. Every single point that has been made here, I agree with. What concerns me, and I'll take some of my time here, is there seems to be a real difference in approach here. The questions that you guys asked of staff are all about minutia. How many square feet of whatnot can power how many houses? How big's the parking lot? And all of that stuff. That is not what we should be thinking about. We have a severe problem here, as many people have said. We are becoming addicted to something, and we have to stop taking more of this addictive drug because it's going to hurt us very badly. We have to back off. We have to look. The sort of thing that really bothers me, not to pick on Supervisor Kirshner, but he was the one who said it. You asked, does this horrendous gash in the community that's going to be caused by this new power transmission line, is it going to power this facility that we're talking about tonight? And I thought I heard the answer was no, it doesn't. But Chair Randall asked some very specific questions, which I think we all need to be thinking about. Isn't it true that really we're all one big mess of data centers, and the power companies have a real problem trying to get those electrons from where they started to where they're needed? And it's all in a big grid, and one thing affects another. And we start worrying about little details when the big picture is we need to stop building data centers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ruth Ann Weaver, followed by James Hanna, followed by Aaron Walter. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair Randall and members of the Board of Supervisors. Excuse me. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you tonight. There are going to be a lot of speakers that will quote facts and data and numbers, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take a different tack. I'm going to try to put a human face on the controversy that we're discussing both sides of, and that is one of my sons is a software engineer, and he lives and works in Hong Kong for the last few years. And he came home for Christmas, and we happened to be driving through Loudoun, or Ashburn, and he said, "Mom, what happened here?" And I explained about the data centers, and he said, "Mom, I'm a software engineer, I'm a web developer. Yeah, we use that stuff, but who's in charge? Who's looking at the big picture here? When is enough enough?" Does anybody know that number? When is enough enough? So we continued our conversation, drove home, and it occurred to me, I am going to be responsible to explain to my children and grandchildren someday, if I didn't do something to try to prevent this problem, if I didn't be the canary in the coal mine saying, "Hey, we've got to wake up here," then shame on me. And I ask that you, please, Madam Chairman and the Board of Supervisors, think too that you also will have to explain to your children and grandchildren someday what you did to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. James Hanna, followed by Aaron Walter, followed by Tia Ehrman. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you for this opportunity to comment on the Belmont application, which I urge that you deny. I certainly join others in opposing yet another 1 million square feet of data center space that is squeezed between Goose Creek and dense residential housing that would get much further pressure on our already strained energy grid and create new demand for more power transmission lines. I would like to focus on the fiscal impact of continuing to approve rezonings, special exceptions, more height and FAR for this and other data centers. This application, according to our review, reflects no attention to its fiscal revenue impact or its fiscal policy context, leaving a critical analytical gap for an application of this size and of one with this tax revenue intensity. More broadly, what began 10 years ago as a positive diversification of our tax base has transformed into a frightening dependence on a single industry. We've come to depend on data centers for the majority of our annual growth in our local tax funding, which continues in 2025. The tax base of the county's business sector is dominated by data centers, which now represent 4/5 of the real and business personal property taxes of our total business community. And overall, data center taxes are well on their way, in the absence of other measures, to soon reach 40 to 50% of all local tax funding, driven not least by last year's colossal rise in new data center revenue space of 10 million square feet. Accordingly, it seems to me that a vote in favor of new sources of data center taxes like Belmont is effectively a vote against our urgently needed economic diversification. Please deny this application and give urgent attention to completing the current data center CPAM, and please to updating our data center fiscal risk policy. Fiscal revenue impact, like location and power and environment, are as important as everything else in the analysis of data centers.
Thank you, Mr. Hanna. Thank you. Aaron Walter, followed by Tia Ehrman, followed by Theos Tomatis. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. I've been here and spoke the last time, so I'm going to try to be brief this time. I think you need to pause on data centers in the county. I hope you vote no on Belmont Innovation Center. You need a process to understand the infrastructure implications to the citizens of this county for data centers. Power is, of course, one of them. I also believe we're at a tipping point in the county for data centers. It's gotten out of control. When is enough going to be enough? Any answer to that would be great. I think also, I don't think data centers should be by right, so I hope that in the future, figure out a way to not have any by right. It requires too much infrastructure as one building. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Tia Ehrman, followed by Theos Tomatis, followed by John Lovegrove. Good evening.
Good evening, supervisors. My name is Tia Ehrman. I'm speaking on behalf of the Piedmont Environmental Council this evening. We understand that the Board of Supervisors' hands are tied when it comes to by-right data center development. We understand the legalities involved with properties long slated for data center campuses. But we also understand that rezonings and special exceptions like this one, which double and triple the size of these by-right campuses, are very much within our legal rights to refuse. For the good of all Loudoun residents and all citizens depending on an environmentally sustainable future, we ask you to stop approving these non-by-right additions, these legislative applications. That is what we mean by a pause to the supersizing of these energy giants. Would those in the audience behind me stand up if you agree, please? The Belmont Innovation Campus represents a watershed moment for Loudoun in our relationship with the data center industry. In recent years, data center rezonings to greatly enlarge their building envelope and special exceptions to nearly double their FAR have been somewhat standard. Our county has welcomed and encouraged the growth of this industry, a relationship which will continue and continue to bring revenue to our county. However, this unprecedented industry cluster has come with an unprecedented challenge to our county. The details of the looming energy crisis have only recently come to light, and we are asking the county to pause additional legislative approvals which deepen this crisis until the policy and zoning revisions that you have initiated are adopted. The data centers of Northern Virginia operating today use 2,800 megawatts, the equivalent of 700,000 homes. That's more than Prince William County and Loudoun combined. Statewide, the data centers approved awaiting construction will use 11,200 megawatts, 2.8 million homes. There's only 3.6 million homes in Virginia, y'all. The applications filed awaiting approval would use an astonishing 58,400 megawatts. That's 14.6 million homes. More homes than exist in New York City, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and London, England combined. Supplying this demand has pushed our regional grid to the brink and is setting back the climate goals for our entire state and nation, negatively impacting the quality of life for all Virginia residents both now and in the future. Please pause discretionary approvals that supersize these giants and continue to supersize this crisis.
Thank you, Ms. Ehrman. Theo Stamatis, followed by John Lovegrove, followed by Rachel Ellis. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is Theo Stamatis with the Loudoun County Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of nearly 1,100 Loudoun employers that are Loudoun Chamber members, I'd like to express our thoughts on an organized effort to advocate for a pause on any data center approvals here in Loudoun County. Business leaders across all industry sectors are savvy and they weigh every risk before investing their capital into a community. We cannot allow Loudoun's reputation to be damaged as a business-friendly community in the millions of taxpayer dollars that have been invested in creating that positive image. Many of the large job creators in Northern Virginia have data centers in Loudoun, and these companies employ thousands of Loudoun residents, which many of them do vote. This industry directly supports thousands of jobs in the trades and support services. The negative economic ripple effect, including jobs lost caused by even the contemplation of a pause on data center applications, will fall most heavily on the working class and small businesses. This also is a matter of fairness. Businesses that play by the rules, that comply with the county regulations, are here because the county aggressively welcomed their industry's growth in our community and shouldn't be subject to these calls to see their industry treated any less equitably than any other. We understand that much of the concern regarding the data center development relates to the impacts of the transmission power infrastructure on the community. The Loudoun Chamber shares those concerns, and we are working with various stakeholders involved in one prominent power line project to ensure those concerns are heard. We also are working to ensure our community knows this power line project and others is driven by factors, including the decommissioning of coal-fired power plants that serve the electrical grid Loudoun is part of. Madam Chair, thank you for allowing me to speak this evening on behalf of the Loudoun Chamber.
Thank you, Mr. Stamatis. I appreciate it. Before the next speaker comes, before Mr. Lovegrove comes, I do want to just repeat that we are not legally allowed to consider a moratorium or a pause. We're just not legally allowed to do that. And so I just want to repeat on the industry. We can take each application by application, but we cannot consider a pause on the industry. Thank you for coming, sir. You will be followed by Rachel Ellis and Bill Hatch.
Hi, John Lovegrove, president of Loudoun's Future. I think it's irresponsible of staff not to look at the power requirement of this data center. It's not magic. We have about 4 gigawatts of power in Loudoun County. 600 megawatts is going to put a great deal of load on that 4 gigawatts. It doesn't magically appear in the county. It comes in on all those transmission lines that we count. I calculate we're going to need about 12 gigawatts by 2030. That's 3 times the power that we have now. That's a lot of transmission lines that are going to be coming in the future. And Dominion is obligated to provide that power, and they're going to build those transmission lines. It's a national security requirement, and we're not going to be able to stop them. They'll even overrule the state commission. So those power lines will be built. The only way you can stop them from being built is stopping the requirement for that power in Loudoun County. Stop digging a hole. This is not magic. If you allow the data center that you can stop by voting no for this to be built, you're going to ask for another 600 megawatts of power. I'm an engineer. It's really pretty simple math. I feel like we're being carefully stage managed up here for a yes vote. The place type that this thing is going to be built in is split between suburban employment and mineral extraction. We could just as easily split this or go to single zoning with what's called SIME, which doesn't allow data centers by right. It's a conditional use. So I don't know why we're saying up here that it has to be suburban employment. So the answers I hear up here are all pointing to a yes vote, and they're really not correct answers. I don't understand why you're not considering power. That's a utility. That's one of the things we're supposed to be considering. If your lawyer is telling you you shouldn't be considering new power, you need a new lawyer, because that is what we are dealing with here. We don't have enough power. We're going to have to bring it in on transmission lines from dirty coal plants in West Virginia. Carbon impact is going to be huge, and we continue to do this. It boggles my mind. I don't understand it, and I guess I never will. It's simple math. Do the math. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lovegrove. Rachel Ellis, followed by Bill Hatch, followed by Richard Remus. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Rachel Ellis, and I am a director with the Coalition to Protect Prince William County. I respectfully request that you reject the Belmont Innovation Data Center application. Residents and local government officials in Northern Virginia know that we are headed towards a power grid issue with all the data center approvals. Let's be clear. Let's be clear, the power demand is due to one industry and one industry only. Residents are already feeling the impacts of additional transmission lines and substations to power what has previously been approved. It is reckless governing to continue to approve data centers without knowing the full impacts of where this electricity will come from. According to a Washington Post article dated March 10th, 2024, Northern Virginia needs the equivalent of several large nuclear power plants to serve all the new data centers planned and under construction. It continues with, this situation is sparking battles across the nation over who will pay for new power supplies, with regulators worrying the residential ratepayers could be stuck with the bill for costly upgrades. It also threatens to stifle the transition to cleaner energy as utility executives lobby to delay the retirement of fossil fuel plants and bring more online. The power crunch imperils their ability to supply the energy that will be needed to charge the millions of electric cars and household appliances required to meet state and federal climate goals. The same article notes that while the proliferation of data centers puts more pressure on states to approve new transmission lines, it also complicates the task. Officials in Maryland, for example, are protesting a plan for $5.2 billion in infrastructure that would transmit power to huge data centers in Loudoun County, Virginia. The Maryland Office of People's Counsel, a government agency that advocates for ratepayers, called grid operator PJM's plan fundamentally unfair, arguing that it would leave Maryland utility customers paying for power transmission to data centers that Virginia aggressively courted and is leveraging for a windfall in tax revenue. The choices made here in Loudoun County are impacting residents throughout Virginia and Maryland as well as West Virginia. We are all subsidizing the cost of bringing electricity to one multi-billion-dollar industry, not only financially but also with our quality of life. The wealthiest corporations in the world are breaking our power grid, and our local and state leaders are complicit in ignoring this threat. Please reject the data center application for Belmont Innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Bill Hatch, followed by Richard Remus, followed by Mark Ludo. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Board. This is Loudoun County's chance to influence our future, both the county and the globe. I acknowledge that we need data. We love data. It's on everybody's life. We're all using it all the time. Loudoun County simply will not have the power, enough power. Power companies are required by law to supply the power whenever the demand is there. Where's this power coming from? Well, a lot of this power is coming from coal plants in West Virginia. We've heard this. And they're coming on transmission lines that are going to permanently scar Western Loudoun. We know that. And there are alternatives. The alternatives are advanced conductors, and we'll hear a lot more about that in the future. But we can do this without building any more power lines. I really regret that the applicant just hit the wrong time to let everybody know that we just don't have enough power. And so I have the same idea that other people, I would like you to deny this because I know you can't pause it and probably reapply once we figure out where the power is coming from. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hatch. Richard Rimus, followed by Mark Ludo, followed by Avis Renshaw. Good evening, sir.
Hi, I'm Richard Rasmus of Hamilton, Virginia, and I'm representing the Loudoun's Future PAC. We're not here to demonize the Belmont Innovation Campus proposal or data centers in general, but we do urge that you not support this data center application that requires special exceptions and/or zoning amendments until state and county data center research and planning processes are complete by the end of 2025. Without repeating what others have said tonight about the burdens that data centers are imposing on their neighbors or the strain they're putting on electric grids, we're only asking that you tap on the brakes now that the danger of a crash ahead is becoming apparent. Voting this application down tonight would not prevent the applicant from building a very large center and profitable center on the land that they own, that is owned for the purpose. We do not believe it would prevent the developer from being able to afford the accommodations they've offered to the neighbors. Even at the reduced square footage, this project alone would add approximately 10% to the Loudoun County data center footprint, which is already the world's largest by a factor of 2. Nor would denying data center zoning amendments and special exceptions stop the growth of data centers in Loudoun that are already approved, a pipeline that will grow by another third if and when Dominion is able to build enough transmission lines and substations to support them. We understand and honor property rights, capitalism, and the usefulness to society of data centers. We recognize that the Board of Supervisors' hands are tied with respect to slowing the growth of data centers on land that's already zoned for this purpose. While data center growth continues at an accelerating pace and largely out of the Board's control, we are simply asking that the Board deny this zoning amendment and special exception until 2 things happen. One is the state study of data center impacts that's due for 2025, and the other is the zoning amendment rewrite that would be led by TLUC Chairman Turner, which will be very useful to the board in considering this and similar requests for zoning amendments and special exceptions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Mark Ludo, followed by Avis Renshaw, followed by Emily Southgate. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Mark Lotto.
I'm sorry.
I live in, it's okay, don't worry, no one gets it right. I live nearby in Belmont Country Club, and, you know, everybody that's spoken here so far has really been very eloquent in their points of contention against the project, and I have to agree with them. I think the board has an obligation to its citizens to not approve the increase in the size. We recognize the rules for a by right development. We understand that. But to continue to dig the hole deeper and have larger and larger facilities is just not right. And there is a backlash coming. You can see it. You see, it's 10 o'clock at night. These people need to be in bed. They're here for a reason. We're all here for a reason. We want to be heard. We ask that we be heard. And again, I think this can be a very profitable development for the proposer at the 1 million square feet that's by right. Enough is enough. And just to close a point, I want to finish. There was a question, Supervisor Saines, regarding approval or somehow consensus by the adjacent HOAs. And I can show you the letter I have here. The HOA does not speak on behalf, the board of directors does not speak on behalf of the HOA members. So if there's a perception that Belmont Community Association approves this development, we have to disagree with that.
I do thank you for your time. Thank you for your service to the county. You're wrestling with a very difficult problem. I don't envy you what you're up against, but we have to wrestle with it. We have to come to grips with this and come up with a solution that recognizes the rights of the developer and the rights of the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Avis Renshaw, followed by Emily Southgate, followed by Neil Larrabee. Good evening.
Good evening. Happy Pi Day, everybody. We're on Pi Day Eve here. If you don't approve the size beyond the by right data centers, you will incur less future power energy needs. It's a big problem. It's been written about in the New York Times recently. The Washington Post had a big thing. Energy is a big issue. I feel very disjointed. This is such a huge problem. It's such a huge deal. Energy in Virginia. We have a state legislature that on the one hand wants to preserve tree canopy, and then the same people are trying to advocate for massive solar and denying localities the right to regulate that. Don't they know how many acres of trees are being cut down, how much canopy is being removed for the solar? As far as the solar on this project, it sounds really nice, but it's a damn drop in the bucket. It's just silly to even talk about that. I'm thrilled with it. I love solar. Industrially, it doesn't make sense in this part of the country. The thought of going to a park in the shadow of a looming, monstrous data center is incredibly dystopian to me. It feels like a scene out of a Japanese anime. I don't know why that is a big deal and why people are paying attention to that. I'm distraught that Virginia is mandating all this clean power with the putting solar fields everywhere. And do you realize that if they put as many solar fields as they want, it would take up over 30% of farmland? Because that's who's going to get it. We always get the business end of things. Whether it's developing houses or putting big infrastructure, it's farmland that's going to be affected because we're easy to build on. And as a farmer, that's what I've got to care about a lot. I would suggest denying beyond the by right. And taxes are pretty cheap here. They're half what my daughter has to pay in upstate New York. Half. That's a lot. I like the data centers we have. We don't need any more. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Renshaw. Emily Southgate, followed by Neil Larrabee, followed by Dorner Traintor. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Emily Southgate. I'm president of the Piedmont chapter of the Virginia Native Plant Society, and I'm speaking for that chapter and also for myself as a Loudoun County resident. We applaud the applicant for the natural resource protection plans that they've included in this application. However, this just points to inadequacies in the county's requirements for construction of these and probably other large facilities. What's proposed in order to increase the size of the structures should be required without that. In other words, what the applicant is offering in terms of natural resource protection should not enable them to expand the building beyond what is allowed by current zoning, but should be part of the basic requirements. While we are concerned with the location of transmission lines, not only on this property but elsewhere in the county, to carry electricity to feed the data centers, we're also concerned with the assumption that it's all right to just expand energy needs way beyond current usage. The county is making significant efforts to improve energy efficiency, to decrease their carbon footprint. However, as long as there continues to be this significant increase in the data center development using current technology, the improvements being made in other sectors such as transportation and building codes are dwarfed by the demands of the data centers. Much of this energy, of course, as we've heard, is coming from like coal-fired plants and so on anyway, so that's a problem, and that bothers us because we are devoted to conserving native plants and native habitats, and as climate changes, that becomes a big problem. As a final point, I'd say that perhaps if the data centers were required to pay for the improvements needed to provide all of this energy, instead of distributing this cost to all of the residents, everyone who's using the power, they would have adequate incentive to find more energy efficient ways to store data. So we encourage you to reject this application And I hope that you'll be able to devise plans that would treat future data centers more strictly and concerned about the energy use, as everyone has been saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Neil Larrabee, followed by Dorna Trainer, followed by Reverend Jean Wright.
Good evening. I would like to address the energy needs and follow up on the solar energy. In Northern Virginia, there are 99.4 million square feet of those under construction, and those already constructed, and those that are planned. 99.4 million square feet of data centers. It would take 47 square miles of solar panels, and it would take the state of Rhode Island for wind. So I just wanted to get that out there first. The Belmont data center, as proposed by SDC Capital Partners, may be considered a hyperscale campus due to its enormity. As such, it will employ sophisticated cloud management and consume upwards of 870 megawatts. Add to that power requirements of the 7.6 million square feet of data centers in Loudoun under construction, the fact that energy guzzling AI chips will inevitably come into the mix, and the advent of electric vehicles. It is very arguable that the current proposed and scrutinized transmission lines may not only turn out to be inadequate, but be destined for obsolescence. The solution for this and similar power issues is being addressed aggressively and globally as data industry giants compete to fulfill their respective AI missions. Both state and federal governments have recently passed legislation to promote research and/or to expedite the licensing of newer, safe, and green nuclear reactors, some of which recycle nuclear waste. China already has one up, running, and connected to its power grid. Kairos in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, is expecting its prototype to be built by 2026 and online in 2030. Is it not worth the wait and engaging in long-term strategic planning in order to avoid decimating Virginia's local economies, uprooting citizens, and permanently ruining our state's coveted bucolic environment, and in order to accommodate hundreds of miles, literally hundreds of miles, of 500 kilovolt transmission towers, and also at the cost of upwards of $3 to $5 billion. Members of this board.
Sir, thank you. Your time is up. Thank you. Thank you very much. Reverend Jean Wright, is that who I had next? I lost it. Yes, Reverend Jean Wright, followed. I'm sorry. That's right. I'm sorry.
There was another person.
No, it was you. It was the Dorna Trainer. Thank you. I'm sorry. That is correct. And that will be followed by Reverend Jean Wright and then Trinity Mills.
All right, so my name is Dorna Tainter from Waterford, and I'm here to urge you to vote no on the special exception for the Belmont Innovation Campus. The transmission lines through Western Loudoun will take my farm and my livelihood, and all those transmission lines feed into the same grid. That's my backyard, but this is no longer a not my backyard issue. It's true that the applicant has offered wonderful environmental protections. It is also true that the cost of continuing to allow special exceptions is too high. You are very clear that you cannot stop or slow down data center approvals, but you can stop allowing special exceptions right now. Zoning is your jurisdiction. You have all the power here. Considering data center applications on an application by application basis is producing catastrophic results. So I struggle to understand how you bear no responsibility for the cumulative effects of your decisions.
Thank you. Thank you. Reverend Jean Wright, followed by Trinity Mills, followed by Josh Levy. Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman Randall and Board of Supervisors. Thank you for this public hearing on the Belmont Innovation Campus Data Center application. I'm Reverend Jean Wright, Chair of Friends Acting for Climate Today,
and co-founder of the Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions. Chairman Randall and supervisors, I'm asking that you vote no on the Belmont Innovation Campus application, or alternatively, vote to pause, not a into this, but vote to pause action on the application. Why? Because we do not have enough information about data center impacts on the energy grid, nor the environmental, ecosystem, and public health consequences. You have likely seen the front page Washington Post article published Sunday, March 24th, entitled, "Amid Explosive Demand, America is Running Out of Power." In fact, the Post states that, quote, Northern Virginia needs the equivalent of several large nuclear power plants to serve all the new data centers planned and under construction, end quote. We know the chances of that happening are almost zero, and if it did, it would take decades and decades. Alarmingly, Dominion Energy has shared with the State Corporation Commission that it's unable to meet the Virginia Clean Energy Act's requirement of net zero carbon by 2045 due to the energy demands of the data centers. As you prepare to vote this evening, please think of what this means for future generations. The State Assembly, due to the number of data center bills introduced in the 2024 session, has paused action on the bills until the 2025 Assembly due to their felt need for more information. They have tasked the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee, JLARC, with doing a data center study to provide them the needed information for an informed vote. Like the Commonwealth, Loudoun County must know more about the impact of data centers. By voting no tonight on the Belmont Innovation Campus application, or like the General Assembly, taking a pause on voting until the JLARC study is released, you will have the opportunity for a more informed vote, a vote based on greater clarity related to new data center construction.
Reverend Wright, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trinity Mills, followed by Josh Levy, followed by Patricia Logie. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Trinity Mills, the Conservation Advocacy Specialist for Loudoun Wildlife Conservancy. I'm speaking tonight regarding the application for Belmont Innovation Campus, asking, as many have this evening, that you pause further legislative approvals for data centers, beginning with this application. We at Loudoun Wildlife acknowledge that the applicant has included in the application more environmental elements than other data centers in the county. It is certainly commendable that this application goes above and beyond the minimum environmental protections required by the board in creative ways. That being said, even these benefits do not outweigh the collective damage that would be done by the approval of this application. Even under the adherence to the applicant's self-imposed FAR maximum, an additional 1 million square feet will increase the footprint of this data center significantly. This much additional square footage, and therefore server capacity, will have a greater contribution to the county's power problem and its implications, including greater stress on the grid and decreased green space from the construction of additional transmission lines. The latter implication is being seen even within the application itself in the form of infringement upon our state scenic river of Goose Creek. Transmission lines required that are proposed along Goose Creek compromise the applicant's stated buffer and further endanger wildlife. Belmont Innovation's location along Goose Creek disrupts the more than 100 acres of contiguous habitat and would subsequently cause the loss of one of Eastern Loudoun's last ecological cores, as designated by the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources. We understand that this application is nuanced. This case is unique for multiple reasons, one of which is that the portion of parcel on which this data center can be constructed by right still has the potential to include such appealing and innovative environmental protections which go above and beyond what is required, setting an example for other data centers. Just like you, as the board, have an opportunity tonight to set an example to your constituents by continually making the decision which contributes less to the exacerbation of Loudoun County's power problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mills, you're speaking on behalf of Loudoun Wildlife. Okay, thank you. Josh Levy, followed by Patricia Logie, followed by Benjamin Wynn. Josh Levy, are you here? Mr. Levy, going once, going twice. No? Okay. Patricia Logie, followed by Benjamin Nguyen, followed by Susan Harrison. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair Randall and members of the board. Thanks very much. Thank you, Chair, for clarifying that you can't hit a pause on an industry. That was very helpful. I agree with the speakers tonight who are asking you to do precisely that with at least this application. I sent you a letter earlier today, and my prime concern is what this overall issue is doing to the cost of land overall in our county. It's an artificial market force that's making a data center be the #1 best use for all of our land, not just this parcel, but all of our land. And that's a problem. That's a problem that together we need to fix. You know, Ms. Renshaw mentioned that her daughter has much higher taxes living in upstate New York. I would hope that you see, by the way you were reelected in every case except Supervisor Ticorni, that you know, Loudoun trusts you. The people in this county do trust you. They just reelected you. Ask us to cooperate with you to help you resolve some of these really complex issues. Higher taxes shouldn't scare us if the alternative is that we've got out of control energy growth. You know, trust us that we can have that conversation and that we will work with you to find a solution. It's not all on your backs. Let us carry the load with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Benjamin Nguyen, followed by Susan Harrison, followed by John Cunningham. Good evening, sir.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chairman. For the Goose Creek Scenic River Advisory Committee, and we are in support of the application still. This developer worked very closely with us at every step of the way, and we feel that the creek is going to benefit by the application. There's the additional buffer that they're offering beyond the 300-foot mandatory that we do not see up at the Vantage site, just to the north, nor on the Twin Creek side. We wish we could have that, but we won't. This one is very valuable to us because in addition to just being an additional buffer, it will help decrease the visibility of the power lines that do have to run through this property to get to Vantage, which is a site that's already well under construction. Further, we're going to have access by county parks to the creek, and likely a trail along the creek, which will increase the recreational value of the creek, which we support. And they're agreeing to preserve the historic area down on the creek and to do water quality monitoring. And all of this is something that we're very big on. As to Dominion Power, they have also worked very closely with us to explain their process, what they have to do, and listen to us as to what we would like from them. The route they have chosen, we feel, is the least intrusive route that could have been picked for this property, particularly to the Vantage site. Lastly, I do want to speak out. When I offer these observations, it's not just because I serve on the committee and I study a lot of things. I actually live in the house between the Twin Creeks sign and the site, so I'm just a little HOA all alone down there. So I don't live adjacent to the wildlife buffer, I live in it. So I can tell you the wildlife is very resilient, despite what Vantage has done and what Twin Creeks has done, and that the additional buffer that Belmont is offering will be a great benefit to the wildlife. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Susan Harrison, followed by John Cunningham, followed by Chris Tandy. Good evening.
Chairman Randall, members of the board, my name is Susan Claiborne Harrison. I'm a longtime county resident with 3 businesses that we own. One's a development company, the other's a farm and an ice cream business. My husband was born and raised here in Leesburg. We have countless projects that we have worked on to get completed: golf courses, clubhouses, housing developments, and the county's first hamlet. Regional malls, I've worked on the regional jail here when I worked with the county. Data centers, yes, we have helped build those. Metro parking garages. As a veteran of 30-plus years of development work experience in the county and in the Northern Virginia area, we are now faced with the complex issue of the power supply to our data centers in this region. We just need to address the disconnect between the Loudoun County's appetite for digital infrastructure and against the ability to provide adequate power without severely damaging resources that are vital to our county. Right now, there are power projects implemented that will traverse regional parks, the Waterford National Landmark, journey through hallowed ground, large blocks of conservation easement properties, and we will lose a lot of agricultural-based tourism in this county. I'm here to press to have this application denied. They can still, build their by right size of a data center, but we just need to kind of try to discuss and work forward so that we can deliver the power load increases, maybe go with advanced composite core conductors through the existing right-of-ways. That would certainly alleviate some of the problems. And these composite core lines carry twice the power, and they're lighter weight lines with less of a loss of power and less sagging. The technology's already been deployed. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. John Cunningham, followed by Chris Tandy, followed by John Ellis. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board. My name is John Cunningham. I've been a 20-year resident of Loudoun. Luckily, I live out near Lovettsville, pretty part of the world. Actually, maybe the prettiest part. I've heard a lot of comments tonight that made me think that I know you can't do a pause, but you can deny because this doesn't fit within the by right size. And that lends us an ability to step back and perhaps have some of these studies that are going on within your group and within the state take place. I just want to add another point. I don't know if you're familiar with something called Davos, Switzerland. It's an annual get-together with all the main leaders of the world, and the big Fortune 500, or actually Fortune 1,000 companies. They get together and they talk about what is the most important thing that they're dealing with. They had two issues this year, but the second issue got trumped and thrown away, and that was AI. That's all they talked about. That's all you're going to hear on all the business stations, like CNBC and Fox Business. They're going to talk about the size of the problem, which is every one of these companies feels they need AI processing. And they're all sending it all up into the cloud, which is now being supported by these data centers. So it is a huge problem. It's a tsunami that's coming. And you could build power lines every 20 miles across the Blue Ridge from here down the state to try to solve the problem. And it won't be. It's going to require some out-of-the-box thinking, like these SMRs that are coming, small modular reactors. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I know the governor of our state is familiar with what's going on. That's not going to solve our problem today, but it certainly will down the road. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Chris Tandy, followed by John Ellis, followed by Mara Wash Copeland. Good evening.
Greetings, supervisors. I'm Chris. I'm here today as president of Loudoun Climate Project, not as a representative of any other group that I might work with. Loudoun Climate Project is a small nonprofit entirely composed of Loudoun residents dedicated to the education of climate concerns and a member of the Data Center Reform Coalition. We're opposed to the zoning change for Belmont because we're opposed to increases in fossil fuel-based energy production cited as necessary to provide energy for continued data center development in Northern Virginia. There isn't enough energy for all of these data centers. if Virginia is to hit its greenhouse gas emissions targets under the Virginia Clean Economy Act. Dominion is forecasting that peak load will double by 2035, and the reason is data centers. Residential, commercial, and industrial are either flat or trending downward. Dominion is planning on using natural gas and delayed coal plant retirements to address that increased demand, as well as drawing energy from outside our area via the PJM grid. They're building the Chesterfield natural gas peaking plant, which is in direct conflict with the Virginia Clean Economy Act, as we're supposed to be moving away from fossil fuels. First Energy, which contributes energy to the PJM grid, announced that they were abandoning their 2030 climate goal and delaying retirement of 2 coal-fired power plants in West Virginia, the Fort Martin and Harrison coal plants. Those coal plants are now forecasted to stay online till 2035 and 2040 respectively, and are directly tied to resource allocation for data centers in Northern Virginia. We know you can't control what neighboring counties or the state corporation commission do, but we're asking you to do what you can to control the growth of data center industry and subsequent power load growth within our county, because Virginia meeting its greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets needs to be a priority. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tandy. John Ellis, followed by Maura Walsh Copeland, followed by Cheryl Harper. Good evening, Mr.
Good evening again. And again, I'm representing Saverville Loudoun. We are agreeing with all but the 2 of the previous speakers that we would strongly encourage you not to approve special exceptions and rezonings for this application. It's the data is unclear. We've been sort of looking at a moving target here. But one thing is certain, that if you vote to approve this application, you'll be voting for more power lines, higher utility rates, higher electricity rates for all of us, for higher real estate values in the county, which are a problem for other businesses, as Mr. Hanna pointed out. This is a big challenge for the diversification of our economy. The state and the county have already decided that we need to look at this very carefully and look at the cumulative impacts of what's coming and plan accordingly. So this is not, as other speakers have said, this is not the time to be approving anything above by right development. Thank you.
Thank you. Maura Walsh Copeland, followed by Cheryl Harper, followed by Morris Meyer. Good evening.
I'm Maura Walsh Copeland with some March 13th lessons. Spring cleaning a box this morning, I found this, an annotated copy of the zoning ordinance to prepare questions for a meeting with Charles Yudd, zoning administrator Melinda Artman, B&D Mike Siegfried, and Linda Erbs on March 13th, 2003. Staff response to questions was, the county does not have a crystal ball and can only enforce restrictions for applications actually submitted. The March 13th lesson was Q&A confirmed the authority of the board to maintain land use controls through the zoning ordinance. In the box were also comments made in March 2009 saying the board should not make decisions without having the right expertise on staff. 30 years ago, in a past life BC, before children, I project managed MCI's global network management platform. From engineers, I learned their lead times for network forecasting. Loudoun staff or ESI may not have the expertise for full data center application review, but they should. March 13th, 4 years ago today, the world shut down to COVID-19. While staff was occupied, I accessed county data and GIS mapping using data center locations and parcels as first exercises. The March 13th lessons show, number one, if I could map Loudoun data centers from home during COVID, I guarantee you industry engineers could do the same or better. There's no way the energy issues we're seeing now were not forecasted by industry 5 years ago. Number two, Loudoun should hold off on improving applications until it has the expertise on staff or ESI to review all the impacts of data centers, including power. And number three, you don't need a crystal ball for the Belmont Innovation application. You know what the impacts are. I learned 21 years ago that the zoning ordinance then and the one you approved in December gives you the power you need It wasn't the Hippocratic oath you took in January, but it was an oath for the stewardship of the county, which means you do, as a board, have the power to do no more harm. Please use that power tonight.
Thank you. Cheryl Harper, followed by Morris Meyer, followed by John Ebersol. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Cheryl Harper, and I live in Leesburg in the Little River District in the Red Cedar, Hamlet's at Red Cedar neighborhood. I'm just going to make it short since so many people have echoed a lot of my feelings and sentiments, but I'm asking you to deny the application for the expansion of the Belmont Innovation Data Center. The proposal is too big and impactful for the location on the banks of Goose Creek, which is an important water source. The proposal is also too large scale, which is equal to the size of 16 Walmart supercenters. Furthermore, adding more square footage means more power consumption. It puts pressure on our already strained energy grid, and many residents like me are concerned about the heavy transmission lines which are going to run through the county because we already don't have enough power. And actually, those the transmission lines are going to be pretty close to my neighborhood, so we're pretty worried about that, close to Evergreen Mills Road, or runs through it. Also, the infrastructure is expensive, and it's asking the residents of Loudoun, in the end, to be on the hook for paying for it. Loudoun has been the global leader on data center development, but it has grown so dramatically that Loudoun must also become the global leader on addressing the cumulative impacts on our communities, environment, and climate. Please vote no to the Belmont rezoning application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Morris Meyer, followed by John Ebersol, followed by Julie Boathouse.
Hi, my name is Morris Meyer. I'm the chair of the Sustainable Energy Standing Committee for the Loudoun County Environmental Commission. I am a senior power systems architect for the third largest battery storage and renewable developer in the world. I'm speaking on behalf of myself tonight. There's been a lot of very good comments. I think in summary, the decisions by the board on this Diaz are much faster than the energy system can be built. Transmission lines take 10 years to 20 years. Power plants take 2 to 5 years. Nuclear power plants are 5 to 10 years, which is optimistic. And so the load that's coming in is essentially the size of the Leesburg gas power plant. Okay, so think of this in terms of how long it would take to build another gas power plant to firm up the load here on this site. In terms of the electrical grid, we've got the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors, we've got the data centers, we've got Dominion and Novec, and then on top of that, we've got the Regional Transmission Organization, or the PJM. And on top of that is FERC for electricity markets and NERC for electrical system reliability. And so what the PJM has said, which are basically, they model the transmission that has to come in on behalf of Dominion and Novec. What they've said is that voltage violations are observed in N-0 conditions. And that's industry speak for saying we don't have any backup in case the load expands beyond what we have. Additionally, they said fictitious reactive power is needed to solve power system modeling, which means they're kind of fudging their homework. We're in a position where they've gone off beyond the edge of the earth, and that heavy regional transfers will require reinforcement to support regional transfers. I've heard it on good authority that Dominion has told the data centers that they won't be able to firm up the load into 2026. So we are at the risk of brownouts and blackouts, and if we approve this data center, we will be forced to have the DEQ variants and run diesel generation in summer peaks and winter peaks, which is, there's a...
Morris?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
John Ebersol, followed by Julie Boathouse, and then we're going to go and do the 4 people who signed up in advance online, which the first person is Scott Brainard. Good evening.
Good evening. Lifelong resident of Loudoun. My name's John Ebersol.
I just wanted to come up and echo a lot of the things that I've heard. And also, I think that we need to kind of take down the market, so to speak, or reevaluate the market forces here. You've had numerous people come before the board, developers and whatnot, who have, said how hard it is to enter the Loudoun market, competing for land with data centers. So it's something, we're becoming heavily reliant on one industry. So I think at some point we got to, reevaluate everything. I personally think data centers should be a special exception when the ZOAM gets completed going forward. Because, you all say affordable housing is important to you all. You just have a major national housing developer sold out their parcel for $180 million. Who can compete against that? Not very many people. So I just wanted to make that point. And obviously echo all the power concerns. It's a major issue and it's not going away anytime soon. It's only getting worse. So at some point we have to draw the line in the sand, and I think this is the application to do it with. There's no compelling reason to approve this special exception. They should be able to get their buy right, and that's it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ebersol. Julie Boathouse. And then we will go to the web, or the remote, and it'll be Scott Brainard and John Barth. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Julie Bolthouse, Leesburg resident and Land Use Director with Piedmont Environmental Council. I'm here tonight to ask you to deny the Belmont Innovation Campus. As the old adage goes, when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. Loudoun is in a hole. An unprecedented situation with the largest data center hub in the world and the fastest growing market here. There is no other place to look to see what they did. Everyone is looking to us as they start to run into their own challenges with this exploding industry. The scale of the data center development we are looking at today is much larger. It's happening much faster, and it's using much more power. We have to adjust our policies and our regulations to match this new paradigm. You have to stop somewhere. Someone's investment is not going to be quite as profitable as they hoped. We cannot continue to increase the square footage of these proposals. Along the Goose Creek, a state scenic river is not the place for a data center, let alone an expansion. A new Leesburg hub is starting here and is going to become another data center alley with all the electrical infrastructure that entails. The more you approve, the more substations, transmission lines you will get, and the more attractive it will be to more data center development. 1 million square feet here, 1 million square feet there adds up. A Walmart supercenter is about 180,000 square feet. This application is asking for the equivalent of 8 Walmart supercenters, with diesel storage, with 200 generators, with 400 megawatts, my estimates, and 2 substations. When did that become a small thing? We can't keep doing this. No more increases, no more rezonings. This is the time to stop digging and start climbing out of the hole. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boathouse. Scott Brainard, followed by John Barth, followed by Mavis Tainter.
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you just fine, sir.
Scott Brainard. Great. My name is Scott Brainard. I live in Lovettsville. And as Chair Randall opened this meeting by saying it looked like all of Loudoun County is here tonight, I'm not here to see if that's the case, but if so, I stand with about 99% of Loudoun County in opposing this application. I'm represented by Supervisor Kirshner, so I'll comment around a statement he made regarding the NextEra power line at the last work session, where he stated that the power line is coming. We have a 7-year build-out in our data center industry that's pretty much approved, so I think the focus on approving no more data centers is not going to stop the demand for power. And from a certain perspective, that's true. I certainly hope the NextEra power line is not complete, but clearly, whether you approve or deny the specific application, there's still going to be a massive demand for power in Loudoun. And this arises from what Chair Randall highlighted in her opening remarks, the to provide power to whatever people build, and the power demands of what developers have built were not fully calculated or understood when zoning rules for data centers were last revised. So now we're in this, and we have to take extreme measures like building a 500 kilovolt line through Catoctin, something that everybody, including Supervisor Kirshner, has stated that they vehemently oppose. But if you take the logic that no one single data center has created this crisis, well, you can apply that to literally every single data center considered in isolation. And if you do that, you can really justify the next 1 million square feet of data centers, because that alone won't represent the entire problem. And in 5 to 10 years, we'll be faced with another 500 kilovolt power line that we're told is regrettable, but inevitable. So that's the logic that got us into this mess. The obvious first step upon realizing that we are in this crisis that we did not fully anticipate is to stop voluntarily approving developers' applications to more than double their square footage. There are subsequent steps like revisiting the overarching zoning regulations around data centers, weighing costs in the tax code that will be much more challenging, but that's not the decision that's in front of you tonight. Tonight it's very simple. If you recognize the energy crisis of that our over-reliance on data centers has put us and are not thrilled by the prospect of building power lines through farmers' fields, you should vote against an application that represents a perpetuation of that crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. John Barth, followed by Mavis Tainter, followed by Peggy LeGrand.
My name is John Barth, and I represent the Audubon Society of North Virginia. The interest of the society is birds and the issues that affect their well-being. Bird populations are declining, and a major factor is the loss of habitat, which is occurring in a decentralized and fragmented way so that the cumulative effect often escapes our attention. The proposed site of the Belmont Innovation Campus is few open spaces remaining in eastern Loudoun County. Its conversion to a data center will be one more incremental step in the eradication of spaces where birds and other wildlife thrive. It's estimated that data centers currently account for 22% of the demand for electricity in Virginia. The Belmont campus will make a significant addition to that demand. A recent article in the Washington Post examined the growth in demand for electric power to meet the needs of data centers and AI. It presented data from Dominion Energy's Integrated Resource Plan showing that by 2040, data centers and other commercial users are projected to account for nearly 70% of the demand for electricity in Virginia. And finally, the society is concerned about the significant use of water by data centers for cooling. Last summer's moderate drought conditions led local water utilities to consider water use restrictions. Given our lack of good information about how the water needs of data centers will affect its availability to residents, we feel this also should be an area of concern. Just as we are losing habitat for birds in an incremental, coordinated, and almost invisible way, the expansion of data centers is happening in a similar fashion. We do not have adequate information about how the data centers and the infrastructure needed to support them will affect our region in terms of habitat loss, air quality, and the availability of critical resources such as electricity and water. We believe requests to expand data centers in our region should not be approved until such information is available to public officials and the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mavis Tainter, followed by Peggy LeGrand, followed by, oh my gosh. Okay, let's go with those two first, and then I found my stack of everybody else. Oh, here we go. Okay.
Hi, this is Mavis Tainter. Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine, ma'am.
Okay. So I'm Mavis Tainter. I have two asks for tonight. One is a moratorium on future data center requests for everything that is not by right. The second request is to please vote no to the Belmont data center request for special exceptions, zoning changes, and all future grandfathering. speak about the collateral damage from these data centers, which is pretty much power needs and the power lines and the way we get power to the data centers. In eastern Loudoun, collateral damage is upzoning, new substations, power grids, enhanced power lines, etc. In western Loudoun, the collateral damage is catastrophic. Houses will be condemned and they will be torn down. Farms, their large working buildings, will be condemned and torn down. Small businesses will have much lower revenues coming in. So when we look at going ahead and proposing more data centers, please keep in mind the collateral damage that so many residents of Loudoun County are going to have to live with over the next few years. Thank you very much, and I appreciate all the hard work you all do for us every day. Bye.
Thank you, Ms. Tainter. Peggy LeGrand, followed by Teresa. I can't really read the handwriting. I apologize. It might be Quartz or Quartz. I think it looks like a GHIORZI. That's what it looks like. But we have one more person who's on the WebEx, or I'm sorry, the remote. Peggy LeGrand, right? Yes.
Okay. Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to speak. I am a resident of Loudoun County. I live off of Canby Road, which is infamous for keeping it dirt this past fall. And now we are facing a giant electrical grid coming through, or power lines coming through our neighborhood. In addition to opposing the expansion of the permit at Belmont Innovation, I just encourage you guys to consider, I know you can't stop what's already zoned, but please reconsider continuing to approve further zoning. It's sort of like when you get one tattoo and you're like, wow, this looks really cool, but now you've got tattoos all over your body and it maybe doesn't look so cool anymore. Can't hide it. That's how I feel like the current approach with data centers is now Loudoun County is the tattooed man, and we can't laser them off. In addition, I also help run a large business in the county that also consumes water and electricity. And as the data centers expand, we're coming up, we're having to face our own challenges in cutting our own water. And as water becomes consumed more by the data centers, that might put us out and cut into the opportunity for us to meet our customers' demands as well. So please vote no on extending this expansion of the permit. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I am now fearful that the media is going to now refer to Loudoun as the tattooed man. We do not want that. We have, I think, from my count, we have 14 more speakers. Teresa?
Yes.
Okay, you will be followed by Anthony. Gosh, it's just a little bit. Viv Berlio and Greg Davis. Yes. Good evening.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Teresa Giorzi. I'm in Lovettsville. I'm opposed to the rezoning of any and all of the parcels beyond the existing parcel that has a by right development for the data center of 1.3 million square feet. No, absolutely no to any additional acreage to build additional data centers. No to the Belmont Cove rezoning and its proposed exemption to reduce the setback requirements from 75 feet to 35 feet. No to the height increases. Please reject the zoning request by the Belmont Innovation Campus to rezone the 84 acres, as well as the special exemptions to increase the potential area for data center development and to reduce the required setbacks. I'm opposed to any and all exemptions and regulatory waivers requested by the Belmont Innovation Campus. These restrictions and regulations were put in place to protect the community and mitigate some of the impacts of data center development. The scale, size, and scope of data centers in Loudoun County has grown so dramatically and expanded so rapidly, it has outpaced the ability to source power locally. Virginia imports most of this is coming from the new power lines that are starting up at the 502 junction. Those two power plants are run by First Energy. I wanted to quote this for you. After careful consideration and evaluation, in late 2023, we made the decision to remove our interim target to achieve a 30% reduction in GHG emissions by 2030. Our interim goal was predicated on meaningful emissions reductions at our Fort Hamilton and Harrison power plants in West Virginia, which account for approximately 99% of our greenhouse gas emissions. Going on, through regulatory filings in West Virginia, we have forecast the end of useful life for Fort Hamilton to 2035 and for Harrison for 2040. So you're going to get about 10 years of use out of that transmission line that is going to destroy the whole eastern side of Loudoun County. In addition, we're still going to have to build new generation when those plants go offline. In state, in Virginia, if you can approve diesel generators, you can approve a new gas plant. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So as of right now, we have 13 more speakers. We are going to take the item as soon as this as this public speaking portion has ended. We will take the item. We will not have another break. Anthony
Virgilio, you can kill the name.
You will be followed by Greg Davis.
Thank you. My name's Tony Virgilio. I've been here before the board talking about data centers. And in last 2 weeks ago, I published an article in Loudoun Now about data centers and about what the impact is on the county. Chairperson Randall said something rather insightful a little earlier today, earlier in the evening when we were all awake, and that is that your decisions today you don't want them to have unintended consequences. So you need to know what the consequences are for the data center application that's before you right now. This data center is absolutely huge. It is 10% larger than all of the data centers, 10% of the size of all the data centers currently in existence in Loudoun County. So the 140 data centers you have occupy about 30 million square feet. This one's 3 million square feet, and that's even after the applicant went ahead and reduced the size. So you're not talking about a small data center like the ones you used to approve back in Data Center Alley. You're talking about a hyperscale data center, which is something that you haven't seen before and you haven't dealt with before, but in fact is now in front of you. Nobody's presented it that way as the new feature, the new idea for data centers. That's what this one is. And it requires a tremendous amount of energy and a tremendous amount of infrastructure support to be able to do that. The problem is that infrastructure isn't there. We don't have the electricity. You already have 5 or 6 data centers that are sitting out there that are sitting idle because they don't have the electricity to be able to turn them on. So the question is, why is this applicant coming forward before you now and saying, approve this? Because it's a forcing function. If they build it, then you will have to provide the power, or Dominion will have to provide the power. And the fact of the matter is, in the application itself, the letter from Dominion Power to the county, it clearly states that it's the Aspen to Golden line that is going to be required in order to be able to fuel this data center. They do not have the energy right now. There's already data centers that are currently offline in the county, and this will be another one. So what they're doing by coming forward with an application and an intent to build this thing is to wait. But the Aspen to Golden Center line is already committed to other applications that are still waiting for power here within the county. So what are they going to have to do? You have to figure that for every gigawatt of electricity that's consumed in this county, it requires another power line, because a 750 kV power line basically supplies a gigawatt of energy. So does a nuclear power plant. And while you go from 6 gigawatts, which is in the current estimated build-out, to 10 to 12 gigawatts, you're looking at 6, 10, 12 power lines crossing the county, or that many nuclear reactors in order to fuel them. We don't have the energy to do it, and it's something that you should not approve, and you shouldn't go ahead and approve this thing so that they have to force Dominion Power and PJM and SCC in order to be able to bring the power.
Thank you, sir.
Do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you very much, though. Thank you. Greg Davis, followed by Liz Lee, followed by Keith Buck. Good evening.
Good evening. Madam Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors, thank you for giving me a couple minutes to express my support for the Belmont Innovation Park. My name is Greg Davis, and I represent over 5,700 members of Steamfitters Local 602 who live and work in the District of Columbia, the state of Maryland, and the Commonwealth of Virginia. We see data centers as job opportunities for current members and an opportunity for us to bring in new members. Local 602 members spend over $8 to $9 million per year on apprenticeship training. Currently, we're spending $14 million buying and building out a new apprenticeship school in Manassas, Virginia. The most important part of this training is the on-the-job portion. Each apprentice must work 2,000 years on the job each year of their 5-year apprenticeship program. This training allows local Virginia area men and women interested in pipe fitting, pipe welding, and HVAC service industry to start great careers with good wages and amazing benefits. It would also allow these workers to work closer to home rather than having to travel to Maryland and DC every day. Since data centers started being developed in Loudoun County, my local 602 members and contractors have worked on nearly every single one. This is not just construction jobs, but service and maintenance jobs as well. Every day our members are in the data centers servicing, maintaining, and upgrading the HVAC and mechanical systems. For all of these reasons, I ask you to please support the Belmont Innovation Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz Lee will be followed by Keith Buck, followed by Gina Faber. Good evening.
Hi. Good evening, Madam Chair and Board of Supervisors. Thank you for letting me come and voice my opposition to all of this. It's way past my bedtime, so. For over 25 years ago, we felt very privileged to be able to raise our family in such a well-planned out area dotted with residential bedroom communities and mixed-use businesses and good schools. The biggest draw to this region for us was a gorgeous topography filled with forests, mountains, wetlands, rivers, parks, and of course, the diverse wildlife. We did our due diligence and we reviewed zoning information, and we were relatively confident that the area that we were buying would not be turned into an industrial park, as it was zoned for residential and agriculture, not for massive industrial parks. No one imagined just 8 years ago the full scope of this technology. Everyone felt that there would be just a few data centers, maybe the size of, I don't know, maybe 2 to 4 Walmarts. Honestly, that's how, we just were so uninformed back then. No one could have imagined that our county officials would allow so much catastrophic rezoning amongst our planned communities. No one could have imagined the environmental impact on everything that we loved and cherished, including the air that we breathe. I don't know if you realize this, but trees, they provide us oxygen, something we need that's disappearing incredibly fast. The long-term unforeseen issues of temperature spikes, cooling facilities, power outages, and brownouts are going to be very real, ongoing challenges for all of us. We simply can't even power the existing data centers we have now, much less those that are planned over the next several years due to the new AI technologies. Due to the unimaginable and completely unsustainable power needed for these data centers, now we wish to run high-tension wires everywhere, further destroying the natural beauty of the landscape that once was Loudoun County when I came over 25 years ago. Who said it was okay for you and your predecessors to allow the ongoing destruction of our communities and our property values? Please open your eyes and really think about the long-term consequences and the impact of your decisions. Some things in life are more important than money. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Keith Buck, you'll be followed by Gina Farber, and you will be followed by David Goosteef. Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am. Well, about another hour, I'd say good morning to you. But hey, you guys got it worse than us. You're having to sit there and listen to everybody go, I'm not going to sit here and say it's killing wildlife or anything like that. If you see up there on the screen where it says Goose Creek Club, that's actually Woodlands at Goose Creek. That's the neighborhood I live in. No big deal. That used to be the golf course. People are talking about the animals aren't thriving and stuff. Trust me, I walk my dog at night. I hear the coyotes. I hear the foxes. Trust me, they're surviving. They're surviving fine out there. I'm speaking on behalf of most of the homeowners there, Woodlands and Goose Creek. We oppose this. The one data center is being built. We can see it being built. We can hear it being built. If you do the mega site here, you guys were actually talking earlier. Ms. Glass was talking earlier. She brought up the point that you guys were talking about, hey, we need land to build houses on. This site here, I mean, that site there would be perfect area to build houses. I mean, that's a pretty good piece of property for the rezoning of that. You know, that's a huge area. That's right near Belmont Country Club. That's prime property. Yeah, I know it's kind of funny. It's not listed there because when I listened to the Leesburg Town Council do their thing for the data center, they said that whole area was industrial. There was nothing there. And I'm like, well, you can ask Supervisor Umstead. She's actually come to the neighborhood. But so anyway, we're opposed to this because, you know, it's a huge area. You guys keep talking about build houses, need areas for building houses. This is a perfect area to build houses. Like I said, I'm not going to sit here and bash these folks. They got a job. They're trying to do their job, which is get a data center built. You know, it's pretty much to the fact of we need houses more than we need data centers. I mean, yeah, people are going to talk about the power and everything else. That's understood. You know, power goes up, you know, things go up, we need power. Understood. I mean, they're already putting another one up right up the street there from this. Russell Branch at Crosstail, they're putting a data center there. The Leesburg Council approved that 2 weeks ago. And they're talking about putting a power site there for that. I mean, they're putting one, and they're talking about doing solar panels.
Mr. Buck, your time is up, but I do
Yes,
have,
ma'am.
give me 1 second, sir. So this is, you live here?
Yes, ma'am. That's called Woodlands at Goose Creek.
And did you say you were speaking on their behalf?
Yes, ma'am.
And speaking on their behalf, they oppose you, the community.
We don't have an
opposes.
HOA yet because the developer still, I've talked to all the neighbors in the neighborhood
Okay,
and told
all
them I
right.
was coming.
Okay, all right. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, Gina Farber, you will be followed by David, it's Giusti, and then you'll be followed by Al Barney. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Gina Faber. I'm here to ask the board to deny the special exception on the Belmont Innovation Center property development. We have more information about the impact of data center operation than we did so many years ago when we all vigorously courted these projects in the past. And I want to acknowledge that what we know now is different than what we knew then. And now that we have more information about some of the negatives associated with data centers, I hope that you show judicious caution in making any decisions that result in our county hosting more data center square feet than we have to. I heard earlier they were talking about the rooftop solar, and that's a great idea for data centers, but I actually am attended the Data Center Reform Coalition, and I heard the description of the Manassas, one of the Prince William data centers, and they said if they covered the top of that, it was a really huge data center with everything, all roof with solar panels, it would be less than 1% of the power that's needed by the data center. So it's a nice gesture, but it's only that really. The other thing I wanted to let you know is that currently 4% of the greenhouse gases that are created in the United States now are due to powering data centers. That's due to go up to 8% by 2030. It is my hope that as the board and staff investigate and develop future guidelines for data center proposals, you create very restrictive qualifications that protect residents, our natural resources, our carbon footprint, and acknowledge the importance of diversity of revenue sources for the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. David, it's Giusti, and you will be followed by Al Barney, and we have, I think, like 9 people to go at this point. Are you here, sir? Going once, going twice? Okay, Al Barney, and you will be followed by Frank Prezio. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair. How are you? Good to see everyone.
Good too.
Al Barney. I longtime resident here, business owner for almost 30 years here in town of Leesburg. I own a voice and data telecommunications company. I need to make sure I disclose that. I also want to disclose that I have never done any work in voice and data telecommunications in Loudoun County. We are based in Chesapeake. We do cover the state. We do state and federal work. With that said, we all know that every project has concerns and constraints impacting the community, impacting the public. The Belmont Innovation Campus is no different. I'm here in 100% support for the project. I've reviewed the project, the scope, and as well as the environmental impact as a seasoned telecommunications infrastructure company that has built data centers and supporting state, local, and federal contracts primarily. This project meets or exceeds nearly every project that we've ever participated in. As a Loudoun County resident for 30 some odd years, I'm usually challenging just about every data center that's going to be built. The Belmont Innovation Campus is a great opportunity for the community to see a data center that reaches inside the environment to provide far more than just a building. Preservation of the Goose Creek protection, preservation in the native plantings, preservation of wildlife, water protection of the wetlands, along with the easement that Dominion Energy is going to have. The building design is brilliant as well as smart and is positioning itself in placement to be less obstructive or less high, so it doesn't look like what you normally ride by in Data Center Alley, as they call it. The community will have access to the Goose Creek, pavilions, trails, and community parks. Loads of beautiful landscape. This project would be something I would be proud to be part of as a resident, not as a benefit financially for me. I thank you and I wish them best of luck because I believe that they've done more than they should based on most of the projects I've seen already. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barney. Frank Prezio, followed by Ben, I think it's Kiefler, and you'll be followed by Josh Reynolds. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Board. My name is Frank Prezio. I'm a resident of Alexandra's Grove at Belmont, an original owner in the development. I live on the first cul-de-sac, at the end of the first cul-de-sac, right across the corner from Belmont Ridge Rd and Gloucester Parkway. I've seen the community grow by leaps and bounds in my whole time in this area. I'm here to request that you strongly approve this development. I've heard a lot of speakers speak tonight about the size of the impact of the development and the concerns. I reviewed the proposal. The developer made a great many concessions with their proffers as far as the environmental impact they'll have, the community impact they'll have on the sight lines from Belmont Ridge Road. I don't know where any of you live. I live directly there, and I will see this development every day. Presently, I drive down Waxpool Road, and I see the concrete slabs that are out there. And this is what, if this development is not approved, would probably look like, because it will revert to a by-right development. They will not have to put all these proffers in their proposal. They will just build what they can. It will look similar to what's going to be built, what is being built presently on the corner of Belmont Ridge Road and Route 7. They have made no request to proffer any additional space or do anything. They're just building their cement slabs up on that corner. Now it's up to us and the board. Do we want to look at another slab of concrete from a major road in the area? Or do we want to look at something that is at least somewhat aesthetically pleasing to the community, set back more than what's required, and more environmental protections that are required by the county? And I think that this facility and proposal that is being built should be used as a template going forward for future changes that you do with the proposals that are going to be made on future data center facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Janet? Thank you, ma'am. I think we just increased it by one. Thank you very much. Okay, it's Ben Kiefler, I think. You'll be followed by Josh Reynolds, followed by Lou Spencer. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, supervisors. Thank you. My name is Ben Kiefler, and I am the vice chairman of the Loudoun Coalition of Homeowners and Condo Associations. We are an all-volunteer organization focused on the collaboration and information sharing amongst our members and county leadership. Collectively, we involve tens of thousands of Loudoun residents. I'm here to speak on behalf of our members as they have expressed issues regarding the zoning exception being considered for the Belmont Data Center complex. This is not an aggressive stance on the merits of the industry, and our members appreciate that Loudoun has benefited in many ways from data centers. The concerns that our members have raised involve the large-scale demand that the facility would put on our grid infrastructure and overall capacity. We do not have an unlimited supply of electricity, and our infrastructure has already been stretched beyond limits, requiring additional high-capacity lines to be deployed. The expansion of the Brambleton complex has been reported by others, but what I've understood it to be is 600 megawatts. For a scale comparison, a little different than some of the others that I've heard this evening, we have a local power station here in Leesburg. That power station was commissioned in 2017 and was 778 megawatts, 78,000 megawatts, I'm sorry. That was designed to power 778,000 homes in Nova and DC. And this facility on its own would represent about 80% of the capacity of that facility. Our members have concerns that not all the relevant information for such high demand facilities are being assessed when projects like this come before the board or the planning commission. Capacity management needs to be part of the equation and factored in prior to approving such high demand uses. Otherwise, we face unforeseen consequences like additional high voltage lines, potential outages as demand outpaces supply, and substantial rate increases across all ratepayers. We have to start thinking about managing our capacity before blindly approving high demand applications like this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Josh Reynolds, followed by Lou Spencer, followed by Jim Bingle. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Josh Reynolds, before you tonight, speaking as a resident of Belmont Country Club. You know, I mirror a lot of the concerns that many of the speakers had here this evening. And when this application was first brought before me, I had some concerns and was doubtful that this was the right location for a project like this. But as the application progressed and that applicant added setbacks to the Goose Creek, solar panels, additional plantings, extra stormwater stuff, 19-acre park trails, and the best architecture that I've seen on a data center, at least in this area, I've been turned to be in support of this application, and I wonder what the message is if we deny it. Are we saying that we don't want additional setbacks from the Goose Creek and the solar panels and all the other things that I referenced previously? My main concern as a resident of Belmont Ridge Country Club is that these guys just leave and we're left with some flex industrial site that doesn't look as good, that doesn't have all of these benefits that they have provided and adds additional vehicles to the roads in this area. So I would just say, you know, we shouldn't be punishing them and sending them with their tails between their legs. I think Supervisor Briskin made a good point about the solar panels in that we should be using this application as a yardstick for all future applications that come in to Loudoun County. If you want to develop in our county, then you're going to have to step up your game a little bit and provide things above and beyond what we've previously seen. I'm actually surprised by all the speakers here tonight because anecdotally, at the bus stop for my kids or at the country club on Friday night, I'd say the worst that I hear from someone is that they're neutral on this in the neighborhood, and at best they support it for the same reasons that I just outlined. I think I heard this evening that we have staff support for the application, and it's in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And in my opinion, it would be a disservice to Loudoun County, but more especially the residents of Belmont, if you denied the application. So I would ask that you please approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Lou Spencer, followed by Jim Bingle, followed by Kathleen Murphy. Kathleen Murphy. Good evening.
Good evening. Chairwoman Randall and members of the board, my name is Lou Spencer. I'm the Assistant Business Manager of UA Local 5 Plumbers and Gas Fitters, and I'm the Secretary Treasurer of the Virginia Building and Construction Trades Council. Please support the Belmont Innovation Campus. On behalf of our 1,900 members and 60 signatory contractors performing work throughout Northern Virginia and elsewhere, we support the Belmont Innovation Campus. Our experience is that the data center owner, operators, and developers to be among the construction industry's most responsible and responsive. These projects have created careers for many in the construction industry, including our members and your residents, that provide excellent wages, health and retirement benefits, and superior apprentice and journey person training opportunities. The decision to move forward is yours, your constituents, and the applicant. If you decide to move forward, and we hope you do, we want to build it for you. We will build it on time, on budget, and we will build it safely and responsibly. Please move to support the Belmont Innovation Campus project. We appreciate all you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Jim Bingle, followed by Kathleen Murphy, followed by Adriata CU Resdu. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair Randall and board members. I'm Jem Bingle, also speaking for the Piedmont Environmental Council. From the beginning, we have maintained that the right choice is to deny the Belmont Innovation Campus as proposed. While we have said that we appreciate the proposed steps to soften their environmental impacts, we maintain that the location is inappropriate, and you've heard many of the reasons tonight for why a facility of this magnitude is not right for this spot. The impacts are irrefutable. You can certainly consider what's being offered in return, but that really doesn't address the big problem we're facing, and that's the conversation we need. We know what we've gained from our data center neighbors, but what are we losing? As Data Center Alley was building up, people weren't thrilled at the changing look and feel of the suburban area, but it was mostly contained, and the revenues made the county budget more manageable. In retrospect, without casting blame, data center development in Loudoun hasn't been well planned or well managed, partly from an inability to know the future and partly from not understanding what the impacts would be. But the point isn't to look back, but rather look forward with the knowledge of lessons learned. If and how are you considering or planning for the impacts of the power demand? This isn't about punishing the applicant. As you start to address the data center explosion in Loudoun, you face even more businesses that want a piece of the action. We've come to a point where the right answer is no to any increases in data center square footage beyond what's permitted by right, and no to zoning conversions and special exceptions so that the county can minimize further impacts. Loudoun has reached and exceeded the tipping point. Now, even when a properly sited data center in the heart of Data Center Alley requests an increase in square footage, it has far-reaching energy demands manifesting as costly transmission lines and substations. Data centers are increasingly creating negative business, property value, resource, visual, land use, and personal finance impacts for residents and businesses across the county. That's not desirable, and it isn't protecting the health, safety, and welfare of residents to keep saying yes when the right answer is no. Please deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bingle. We are down to the last four speakers, Kathleen Murphy and Adriata CU Resdu is my next speaker. Good evening.
Hello, I'm Catherine Murphy. Nice to meet you. I am up here because I thought it was important to come up here and say that I think you should vote no. I think you should vote no because this is a zoning reordinance, right? Excuse me, rezoning. We don't need it. We don't want it. why would you approve it? It's not needed because we don't need more space for data centers. There is already space for data centers. A data center can go on the site already. Doesn't need to be that big. We don't want it. You've heard 100 reasons why over the last however many hours about why it's not wanted. So my question is, why would you do it? It's not wanted. It's not needed. And you have the opportunity to say no to approving an exception. Currently, right, it's zoned for agriculture, for housing, some of this. I think a point was already made about how more housing is needed. Here's the opportunity to take a stance on that. Anyway, I didn't have anything planned. I just felt that it was important to come up here and make that point. You've heard it said 100 times, so thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Our last three speakers are remote speakers. Adriana Ciuresdu, Cynthia Shellberg, and John Nicholas. In whatever order.
Good evening.
Yep.
Members of the board. My name is Andrada Chirescu, and I live in the Alexandros Grove at Belmont neighborhood, which is adjacent to this future data center. For reference, my home would be around 1,500 feet away. I would like to recognize that there are a lot of speakers here tonight, and only a few mentioned that they live in the immediate area in Belmont. I appreciate the passion and everyone's concerns, but clearly this application has become a large political issue over proposed transmission lines in other parts of Loudoun County and power grid concerns. I'd like to point out that most speakers did not specifically address this data center application and the direct consequences to those in close proximity. My concern as a neighbor is that if this data center is built by right, it will be louder, less visually appealing, and the community will receive virtually nothing positive in return. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. We have Cynthia Shellberg and John Nicholas is our last speaker.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Shellberg. I live in Alexander's Grove. I've been here for 27 years. We live directly across the street from the proposed Belmont Innovation Campus, and we support this application and ask that the board approve the application as well. I would like to point out that the decision to support this campus application was a difficult decision. We are dismayed that the section of Belmont Ridge Rd corridor adjacent to our community will be home to 3 data complexes. Our concerns go beyond the look and size, but we are concerned about other things, property values, ongoing noise, light levels, the loss of natural habitat, and the increased demand on the power grid, of course. However, because nearly 50% of this project acreage falls by right, we fear that denying the application would result in a less desirable facility. In fact, it would become another wax pool concrete jungle facility. No noise attenuation would be available, no consideration for Goose Creek, no parks, no trails, no extras to help the community, and the look and feel of that would be an eyesore, and we would be living right across the street. So again, we urge the board to approve the application. It's a good one, considering the alternative for the residents who live here. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Our last speaker is John Nicholas.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, my name is John Nicholas. Many of you know me, and you know about on some of these subjects and some of the analysis that I have done regarding the data center impacts on Loudoun County. I would like to address the issue of unintended consequences. Many people talk about that, but let's think about those unintended consequences. I'd like to leave you with these thoughts. Power that we're talking about, if it had been ideal years ago, all the power and data centers would be along the north-south backbone of Dominion. To have power and data centers out here at this time is a trend that rather than tear down by right buildings in the east, these applicants have chosen to move out to where the power is going to be focal pointed, no matter how it gets into Loudoun County. New lines from the west, new from the north, new from the south, it ain't matter. The backbone's where it's all going to focal on, including for artificial intelligence, by the way. If you would deny this, possible say no, as many have said, you'll find that it will accelerate the tear down of by right projects, which are all existing buildings with tenants and Loudoun County citizens employed there. East, that's the choice that you will give this applicant if it's denied. Another one is if the east, for whatever reason, becomes an issue, there's plenty of raw out along the next tower line that's coming in through the west. And I'm sure there will be many people out there that may find that that's a better place to go for data centers because of the new power. So there are three different unintended consequences that I think you should think of as you go forward with whatever decision you make tonight. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. Thank you very much. Okay, supervisors, this application is in the Ashburn district. It is important for me right now to be consistent in how we do all of our meetings. And the way we do all of our meetings is the first motion that is made is the packet motion. I usually go to the district supervisor to make the packet motion, and if they don't, then I'll make it being the chair. The packet motion is the motion to approve. I'm going to ask the district supervisor if he wants to make that motion. If he does not, I will ask somebody else if they want to make the motion to approve, because I don't want to make it either. So, Mr. Turner, would you like to make a motion to approve?
No, ma'am.
All right. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make the motion.
It's okay.
All right, thank you. I move that the board approve Ledge 2023-0048 Belmont Innovation Campus ZMAP 2022-0021 Special Exception 2022-0042 SPMI-2023-0013 and ZMOD-2022-0077, subject to the proffer statement dated March 6, 2024, and the conditions of approval dated March 6, 2024, and the findings for approval provided as attachments 1, 2, and 3 to the March 13, 2024 Board of Supervisors Public Hearing Supplemental Staff Report.
Motion's made and seconded by Supervisor Letourneau. Discussion on the motion. Mr. Sains.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to start out by saying thank you to all the speakers that came out and spoke and said your piece. Thank you to all the emails that we received as well. But what's in front of us is, on one hand, if you vote yes, you get a data center. If you vote no, you get a data center. That's what's in front of us. Now, to be honest with you, I wish what was in front of us was a vote yes for a data center and a vote no, you don't get a data center. But that's not what's in front of us. You vote yes, you get a data center, as Mr. Barney and the gentleman that lives in the neighborhood that spoke directly after Mr. Barney, and the last couple of the speakers that we just heard over the speaker who live in the area as well. If we vote yes and approve this application, we get a data center that will be built lower, more aesthetically pleasing, with acoustics. We've heard numerous times people asking for solar panels on data centers. They're giving us solar panels. The solar panels that are being put on here is not to generate the power for the data center. That's not possible. That's not happening, but it's generating energy to put back into the grid. We are going to get trails, parks, setbacks off the Goose Creek, to the point where the Goose Creek Association has worked with the applicant in approving what they're providing. We've received statements from the Belmont Homeowners Association Board of Directors. So the actual members that are on the Board of Directors that are voted by the membership, the Belmont Homeowners Association is in favor of this. They came out and spoke at the public hearing. They came out and spoke the first time you heard this application in favor of this application. And the reason why they're doing that is because of what's being proffered into this application if we vote yes. Unfortunately, with the by right use, they don't have to do all those things. And in a perfect setting, and I'll say this publicly, and I've said this numerous times, I wish data center applications, homeowner developers, even when they have a by right use, would do the right thing and come with a very, very good application. But legally, they don't have to do those things, so that's why we do not see them in by right applications or by right uses. And with the special exceptions, we're able to negotiate, talk with them, and have them proffer these things in. So that is why I am supporting this application, because if we support it, we're going to get a better product than if we went by right. Because at the end of the day, we're still going to get a data center. There's still going to be, as the conversation, this is a bigger conversation. There's two issues. We have this application and the larger conversation regarding energy use, the proposed power lines, and et cetera. That's still definitely a conversation to be had, and we're working to try to solve those issues. But this data center is still happening regardless if we vote yes or vote no, and we're still going to have those underlying issues. So with that, I will stop because my time is ending, and I'll do some more in the closing.
Thank you, Mr. Sains. Excuse me. Ms. Umstadt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to thank everybody for coming out and speaking. This was a very thoughtful audience, a very thoughtful group of speakers. I am going to support this tonight for many of the reasons that Supervisor Sains pointed out. This is by far the best, most environmentally sensitive application that we have received. The community that is closest to it supports it, and that doesn't mean I'm not very aware of my constituents who are opposed, because they are thoughtful people, and they have always made very good arguments. The problem we're facing, as you know, is national. And one of my constituents did ask that I read the Washington Post article that's been referenced tonight, and I did. If we don't change the way we live, data centers are going to be an essential part of our lives. They have enabled us to get through a pandemic shutdown. They enable us to telecommute. They enable us to do our business by email and virtual meetings, as opposed to getting in automobiles and driving on the roads in person. The problem is national. The problem is worldwide. The problem locally is that from everything we've been able to determine, this data center does not require the building of an additional transmission line. It does not. This data center does a better job of protecting water quality in Goose Creek than if this property were to develop by right. This data center provides far more in natural areas than would be required by right. Given what could be done by right, the aesthetics on this data center are far higher and more beneficial to the community that will see it every day. And the fact that these folks have instituted extraordinarily extensive changes to this application, working with the district supervisor to try to make sure this is the best application possible. That fact has come to fruition, and they have created something that is far better than we could have gotten otherwise.
Thank you. Mr. Kirshner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for everyone who came out. Thank you to the applicant and staff and all that's going on. I'm definitely going to support this application. Let me talk to you why. I appreciate what everyone had said, but there's obviously been talking points floating around, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. I don't know how many here have actually read this whole packet through, but I bet you most of you haven't. I have. I'm pretty familiar with it. I think most of the people up here on this dais have. We have different opinions on how to approach things. But let me just talk about a couple things. People mentioned fiscal impact. If we took the position that a lot of folks took tonight and some emails that we were getting about fiscal impact, your taxes are going to go up 50 to 100% at some point in the near future. I don't think anyone in this room would stand up and say, yeah, I'd like my taxes to go up 50 to 100%. I don't think I would. I understand there needs to be a balance, and this board is really working on that balance. We're trying to keep, we're trying to entice other types of industries to come in, as well as try to do what we can to restrict increasing of taxes. But getting rid of data centers, which isn't going to happen, is just going to make taxes go through the roof. But I also want to address the power grid question. This application has zero to do with the Western power lines. Zero. Zero. Okay? You can ask anyone that knows what they're doing, what they've studied. It has zero to do with it. Dominion even mentioned it. It has to do with the Route 28. And so that should never even be considered. We're not even allowed to really address the power question itself. And also, it's not going to help the power grid, because if you don't build something here, it's going to get built somewhere else. The power grid is still going to be strained. Those are problems that have to be addressed in a different manner. Approving or disapproving of something that is going to be less or bigger is not going to make any difference in the power grid. That's false information that's been floating around out there. Also, for those of you who came from Western Loudoun, I'm working my butt off. I don't want these lines to come through either, but it doesn't have anything to do with this. But let me tell you, data centers have a lot to do with how much we are preserving Western Loudoun. Thousands of acres are coming from developers, both housing and data center developers to the west. So just keep that in mind as you go through this whole thought process.
So we're not doing that. We're going to we're going to let all the supervisors.
I just want to quickly go over this application. If we allow this to go by right, what message are we sending? We're getting no proffers, no environmental considerations, no tree cover, no increased buffers to the creek, no extra protected buffers to the road, no solar, no parks, and less in tax revenue. That is what we're getting. This application, quite frankly, and several supervisors have mentioned it, several people have is the gold standard. If we tell an applicant, go away, forget you, you have literally come and satisfied everything you've asked by all the supervisors up here and by all the environmental groups. The message we are sending is, we want by right, we want ugly buildings, they're going to come, and quite frankly, we're basically telling them no environmental, no aesthetic, and no protective measurements. Be damned to go by right.
Thank you, Mr. Letourneau.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everybody who came out tonight for a good conversation. So it's frustrating that this moment's come, and we have had this reaction, and it's not surprising it's come, and I knew it would come, but it's come to oppose the single best data center application the county has ever seen, without question. There is a basic lack of fairness associated with that, because our job is to look at each of these individually while trying to address the collective impact. The collective impacts are there, and quite frankly, if this application had not changed, I probably would join some of my colleagues in opposing it because of just the sheer scale of it. But now we're faced with trying to consider 1.3 million square feet by right data versus this, roughly 2.8. And we have to look at what's the proffer package and what happens if we deny it. And that's really where I struggle because of the uniqueness of this site. This is not the place for a by right data center. If there's anywhere in the county you don't want a by right data center, it's next to the Goose Creek with no protections. And unfortunately, that's exactly what we have. We don't have to guess what's going to happen. We actually heard it from a few of the neighbors and the gentleman who has to live next to it. We heard what's happening with 2 by right data centers here. So somebody asked for us to think about living with ourselves and thinking about, well, I can't live with myself if I let that happen again here. I can't. So I get the macro issues, but the reality is we're not going to solve that with this one application. And yeah, sure, of course, you know, what's going to happen when they all come? Well, you know what? This is a pretty unique application because they're no longer asking for an FAR increase. They're only asking for a piece of property that's split zone to be rezoned, which is literally in the county policy. We're not going to see very many applications like this elsewhere in the county. It's very, very unique. So it doesn't say we're just going to approve every special exception, because I'll tell you right now, I'm not. But this is not the one to try to take out the collective angst of all of us on data centers on. Not only is it not fair to them, it's not fair to all the impacts that happen if this property goes by right. So that's why I am going to support it. I understand we have work to do. We're taking it seriously, absolutely taking it seriously. This application, I know people are booing and hissing, but it does have its power commitments. I verified that myself. It's 100% already got its power commitments. The commitments are the same if it's by right or not. So it doesn't even impact that side of things. Other ones will, and we have more work to do on this.
Thank you. Mr. Croney?
Thank you, Chair Randall. I will not be supporting the motion tonight. There has been a resounding request to deny this application tonight, and I will be listening to the residents and all county residents and not support this motion. I believe we have reached a tipping point. I know this application has more environmental benefits than others, but we should have been asking for those environmental benefits years ago. So it shows that you can do solar. Yes, Supervisor Briskman, thank you for mentioning that. And we should have done that years ago. And the solar is not going to power the data center. I think it's like 2.4% if you do the math. So it'll only help with maybe the lights and maybe some of the EV cars. And I think it's great. But again, we should have been doing this years ago. The benefits do not outweigh the damages. This data center will provide greater stress on the grid. And it'll have transmission lines along the Goose Creek. All the transmission lines feed into the same grid. To say that this data center won't impact the grid is ridiculous. It impacts the entire grid. So it's a whole system. And we heard that from Dominion tonight. I also believe that environmentally, it is an encroachment on our sensitive areas. Almost 3 million square feet of data center and high voltage transmission lines along our water source and the scenic river is an encroachment upon our sensitive environmental features. And the scale will contribute to the need for additional high voltage transmission lines. So I won't be supporting this. I'm going to listen to the residents. My residents have said they don't support this, and I won't either. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Glass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So after thinking long and hard, I will not be supporting this application. As is evidenced by the number of speakers tonight, the people of Loudoun are asking us to take closer looks at the impact of data centers on our county. This application is asking to do more than double the square footage of data center than what would be allowed by right. This application for increased data center footage is not compatible with the residential across the street. I regularly hear from constituents who already live near data centers about several issues, and I cannot support allowing a larger data center to be built directly across the street from existing residential. Residential that was approved and built long before anyone knew what a data center was. I want to thank the applicant for their proffer commitments as they showed what applicants and applications should commit to, but I think it is a better land use decision to go with the by right allowances on this parcel as the existing zoning permits economically viable options and is reasonable. The special exception increase has too much of a negative impact on the surrounding area, and I do not think can be adequately mitigated. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Briskman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It probably is no surprise that I won't be supporting this application. I do appreciate all of the efforts and proffers by the applicant. I agree with the findings for denial, and I won't be supporting it. I do look forward to the JLARC study that will be coming from Richmond. As I have for many years been concerned about the unintended impacts, the unmeasured impacts, and the unintended consequences of the plethora of data centers in Loudoun County. Just to comment on, and I actually do also believe that the applicant could do the good things for the Goose Creek and do the solar and all of the things that they proffered to if they would like to. They could even just do some of them, like protect the Goose Creek. They could do that. It doesn't have to be in a proffer. To some of the folks that came to speak tonight, I really, really appreciate you. I feel like the cavalry has finally arrived, and this is just to speak to some of the comments tonight. Someone mentioned we now have a tsunami. For me, the tsunami came many, many years ago. It came in 2019 when I was knocking doors and my constituents said, please stop building data centers in Loudoun County. It came last year when I tried to ask our General Assembly members to bring a bill that would require burying high voltage power lines on Route 7 because we saw that coming down the pike. The tsunami was here when I saw the revenue picture was going to be out of balance for us. The tsunami was here for me when I drive through Ashburn and Broad Run and it looks like Ready Player One. The tsunami was here for me when we started seeing applications like this, houses right across the street from where data centers are going to be built. So we've talked a lot about a lot of that stuff tonight, but I will let you know I've been there for a while. But as far as this application goes, I'll be voting no, and I will talk more if we have another motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I am also going to vote no on this application. One of my colleagues just said something that is very true. He said this is the single best application we've had. But this is what we should be saying is this is the single best application we have this time. We've had single best applications in the past, and every time we have one, what we say is we have to vote for it because it's the single best application. At some point, when do we stop voting for the single best application? If that's the standard, we will always vote for this. We will always vote for this. The applicant has been tremendous. They've been amazing, and I'm not going to say anything negative about them or this effort or what they are doing. I'm not. But I do believe that, one, I would like to really try to honestly discuss diversifying our economy. Honestly discuss that. I believe, or rather I know, that the zoning of this property permits other by right uses besides a data center. This is not the only by right use we could do at this property, on this property. The gentleman from Dominion actually talked about the fact that it does adversely affect existing proposed developments and immediate impacts on surrounding properties as far as the grid. He said that himself. He said that himself. None of these applications are ever in a silo. He said that himself. You know, I wish I could say that this was a hard decision for me. The only thing that made this a hard decision for me is I have such respect for the people that bought it. Huge respect. But this wasn't a hard decision for me. I did not vote to send this on to this public hearing. I voted to not even send this forward, and I was the only one to vote to not send this forward, because at some point, I don't know how we keep doing this. I don't know how we keep ignoring 80% of our public who are making very good points around things like they're saying we have other by right options. They're talking about whether it's a good use, a good fit for neighborhoods, residential development, a manner that can be mitigated. Our citizens are saying these things to us. I hope that the applicant doesn't just build a slab. I hope that, and they don't have to. They can do something more if they choose to. I hope they don't. I understand that I take a chance with this vote, but at this point, I don't know what else to do besides take that chance. So I'm going to be a no. Mr. Saines, would you like to have a closing?
Madam Chair, I'd actually like to withdraw my motion to approve and make another motion.
So who made the motion to,
I did.
who made the motion, who seconded the motion?
Mr. Letourneau.
A request to withdraw.
Make another motion.
I understand. Mr. Sains wants to withdraw his motion to approve, and Mr. Letourneau agrees with that. I will say yes to that. The motion is withdrawn.
Thank you. I have another motion, Madam Chair.
Well, well, yeah, that's true. I mean, if there's another motion, I have told Mr. Turner that as a district chair, as a district supervisor, he would make the next motion because it's not the package motion anymore. So if you wanted to withdraw it, you can.
Well,
but
amend it, excuse me. I can do that? I used the wrong language. I'd like to amend my motion.
Yeah. The motion you made was to approve, then the new motion would be able to defer?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to make a ruling that I do believe that motion is not in an opposite. I don't believe it is a contradictory motion. I think if the motion had been to approve or then to deny, that would be a contradictory motion. But a motion to amend or to defer, I'm not going to call that a contradictory motion. I will allow that motion.
Okay. I'd like to, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to defer this item to the April, Mr. Rogers, can we do business or we can do public hearing? Which one?
It would need to go, excuse me, it would need to go to the April 10th public hearing.
Okay. That'll be the motion.
So there's a motion on the table to send this to the April public hearing, which is a very full public hearing already. And is there a second on that motion? So a motion on the table to send this to the April public hearing. Discussion on the motion to send it to the April public hearing. Mr. Sains.
No, like I said, we had a very spirited debate and conversation here. So we would like to defer and see if the applicant can make some adjustments and see what happens from there.
Mr. Sains, if you're going to make a motion to refer, you got to give us a reason you're deferring. Is it, would you say it again, please?
For the applicant to continue looking at the application, make some adjustments.
For the applicant, you're making a motion to defer so the applicant can adjust the application if they choose to.
Yes.
I understand. Mr. Letourneau.
Let me ask staff a question. Are there substations?
Mr. Letourneau seconded the motion. I got it. Mr. Letourneau seconded
Are
the
there
motion.
substations part of this application?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So even if the applicant is by right, they're going to require substations?
Right, they already have a site plan in to clear and grade the property and allow 2 data
So
center.
would there be an opportunity for the board to try to negotiate something around the substations?
Certainly.
Okay, not if the application is denied, though. So the reason to defer, I think, would be to go back and attempt to salvage something out of the application to get the residents along the Goose Creek something, even if it's not extra density. But the board is at some point going to be faced with the substation discussion anyway. So I think there's some logic to attempting to leverage that for some sort of benefit to the area here.
Discussion on the motion on deferral. Mr. Turner, whose district this is actually in.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I'm going to use my 3 minutes to catch up a couple of things. Number one, any informed person should never use the word solar panels and data center in the same sentence. There's 10,000 square feet of data centers on each building, figure 4 buildings-ish. That's 40,000 square feet of solar panels. It takes 10 acres of solar panels to generate 1 megawatt. So 40,000 or 1 acre of solar panels would deliver exactly 1/10 of 1 megawatt to this 600 megawatt data center. Don't use solar and data center in the same sentence ever again. Supervisor Kirshner made some comments that he wanted to clear up some factual incorrect information. So I'd like to clear up some pretty grossly factually incorrect information that Supervisor Kirshner put out there. if we did away with these data centers, our taxes would go up 50 to 100%. We have the data centers. Our taxes are 25% on average lower than the rest of the Northern Virginia jurisdictions. If we did away with all data centers, our taxes would go up about 25%. And we're never going to get rid of the data centers that we have. There is no way in the world our taxes would ever go up 50 to 100%, no matter what we do with the data center community. It has zero to do with the Western Power Line. The Western Power Line's name is the Mid-Atlantic Resiliency Line. They are driving that line, and PJM has specifically stated because of the constrained power situation in eastern Loudoun County. That's why they're building that line. If they don't build that line, I guarantee you they're going to build 2 or 3 other lines because that's the power, 31 million square feet, and we've already permitted 41 million square feet. More lines are coming. Try down the north side of Route 7 in addition to the south side of Route 7. This adds to that burden. No effect on the power grid. Enough said about that. A 600 megawatt data center is about 20% more than the existing. It represents 20% of our existing 3.1 or so gigawatts that we're already using. Finally, the last thing is, if we approve this application, we are setting in absolute concrete that all a data center company has to do to build anything they want is add more bells and whistles, and this board can be bought. That's the message we are sending. This is a phenomenally good application. I commend the applicant for this application. It is the best application by far we have ever had. But I agree with the majority of the comments that we've had here tonight. At some point, we have to say, stop. We do not have enough power to power the data centers we have. We certainly do not have enough power going forward to power the additional 41 million square feet. PJM knows it, the data center community knows it, and we can't do that. That's why I'm voting no on the deferral. We need to make a decision right now on this application.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get to the deferral question. Any other discussions on the deferral question before I'm going to. Okay. I will say again that I actually didn't vote to move this on, and so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to vote for the deferral. I don't know why I would do that. You know, I'm gonna say this one more time. This is a tough moment for me because I consider Ron Meyer a friend, and a good person, and so but when you're up on the dais, this can't be Phyllis and Ron. This has to be Chair Randall and the applicant. That's what it has to be, and so as much as I admire you and appreciate how good this application is, I'm going to vote no on the deferral. All right. So the motion was made by Mr. Saines and seconded by Mr. Letourneau to defer the application. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oppose? Nay. Okay. So I'm sorry. If you're an aye, please raise your hand. All right. That motion will fail 5-4 with Ms. Umstead, Mr. Kirshner, Mr. Saines, and Mr. Letourneau voting against the motion. So I'm now going to go to Mr. Turner for a motion because the other motion was withdrawn. And so once it was withdrawn, it was withdrawn. And so we haven't had a decision at this point because that motion was withdrawn. So I need to go to Mr. Turner to make a motion. Mr. Turner, would you like to make a motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the Board of Supervisors deny Leggy 2023-0048, Belmont Innovation Campus, ZMAP 2022-0021, SPECS 2022-042, SPMI 2023-0013, and ZMOD 2022-0077 based on the following findings for denial. 1, the existing zoning of the property permits economically viable by right uses and therefore is reasonable. 2, the modifications proposed as part of these applications are incompatible with and would adversely impact nearby existing residential development in a manner that cannot be reasonably mitigated through development conditions. 3, the proposed scale of the development would contribute to the need for additional high-voltage transmission lines, which will have adverse impacts on existing and proposed development in the county and immediate impacts on surrounding properties. 4, portions of the property are located in the suburban industrial mineral extraction place type, which recommends a maximum FAR of 0.60. The proposal to develop individual parcels at a maximum FAR up to 1.0 is inconsistent with this recommended density.
Motion, okay. Now we're awake. Motion made, second by Supervisor Bricksman. Discussion on the motion, Mr. Turner.
Yeah, Madam Chair, just one quick point to my other comments. If we use the criteria of each individual applicant has sufficient power, Dominion is required by law to tell each individual applicant, we can provide you with power because they're a customer, and Dominion has to do that by law. We are into the point 3 in the reasons for I'm making this motion is the critical point here. The proposed scale of the development would contribute to the need for additional high voltage transmission lines, which will have adverse impacts on existing and proposed development in the county and immediate impacts on surrounding properties. This board has an obligation to look at the collateral effects of every application on the surrounding neighborhood. In this case, the surrounding neighborhood is Eastern Loudoun County. And that's why I think this is important. I think it's groundbreaking. I think we have turned a corner, but this is the kind of consideration I think that we need to have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, anybody else have a discussion? All I would say before I go back for a close, if you want to, I do thank everybody for coming out, no matter where you were on this spectrum. I do thank you for coming out. This was hard. This was a hard vote for a number of reasons. I do want to say one more time that there is no such thing as a moratorium or a slowdown or a stoppage or any of those things on any industry in Loudoun County. That is not a thing. And I need to say that just one more time to put like a stamp on that, because I know that we got some emails that said that that's not a thing from county staff, nor from county supervisors. But overall, this was a very hard vote because the applicant did do so much for this application, and so and I don't want to ignore that like that didn't happen. But Mr. Turner read the reasons for denial. I will associate myself with those comments and go back to him if he wants to have any closing comments.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. First and foremost, I want to thank the applicant. This is the best application for a data center. I know you're ready to climb over the table and strangle me right in front of the dais here, and I totally get that. I totally appreciate that. I understand that. Right now, we're working for two different bosses, and that's just reality. I want to thank everybody who came out and spoke here at midnight. Your arguments were cogent, well thought out, and diverse enough that they showed that each of you put your own touch on it, and I think that's laudable, and I really do appreciate it. So thank you all very much.
All right, Mr. Turner made the motion. Ms. Bricksman seconded the motion to deny. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Did you vote, Ms. Glass? You said aye. All opposed? That motion to deny will pass 5-4. We still don't clap. We still don't clap. We still don't clap. We still don't clap. The lady over here is jazz handing like she's fanning me off over here by her jazz hands. Thank you very much. Supervisors, I'll see you on the dais tomorrow for a budget meeting.